Siema, siema. Jak mnie słychać? W porządeczku? Dopiero tutaj ustawiam, żebyśmy mieli jeszcze czat w trakcie. Jak mnie słychać? W porządeczku? Dopiero tutaj ustawiam, żebyśmy mieli jeszcze czat w trakcie oglądania. I będzie chyba dobrze. Zrobimy tak. O. Będzie chyba teraz elegancko. Dobra. Przywróć mi tu czat. Cicho trochę, tak? No dobra, zaraz tutaj spróbuję coś zorganizować. Niby mam tutaj mikrofon na maksa ustawiony, ale zaraz coś wymyślimy. Jakiś filtr, może expander to był chyba, który mi tutaj więcej gaina nadawał. O, a teraz jak? Trochę lepiej? Powinno być trochę lepiej. No spoko. No a tu się tutaj powoli, wiesz, przygotowuję. Kamerkę ustawiam, tego typu tutaj rzeczy, nie? O, lepiej. Dużo lepiej. No to elegancko. No to tak zostawię w takim razie. Niech to tak sobie będzie. No spoko. Także zaraz tutaj będziemy wszystko startować. To tak zostawię w takim razie. Niech to tak sobie będzie. No spoko. Także zaraz tutaj będziemy wszystko startować. Sobie gdzieś muszę na boku odpalić statystyki. YouTube Studio, to chyba to będzie. Czy jeszcze blending mode? O! Tak będzie chyba lepiej. Dobra, jeszcze gdzie ja mam? Tutaj muszę wyciszyć. I zaraz będziemy lecieć z tematem. Znaczy, puścimy jakąś muzyczkę. Coś tam powinno w słuchawkach grać. A jak będzie za cicho, to powiedzcie. Sobie dam przeciwko. A, siema! Bazyl! Powiedz mi, jak z tą muzyczką w tle i mnie słychać dobrze? Nie jest za głośno, nie za cicho? Tu jeszcze taki, wiesz, robię ostatnie szlify. Zaraz znajdziemy, gdzie jest stream. Co konkretnie zrobił? No niestety, no, widzisz. Tak to bywa, nie? Zobaczymy, jak to będzie. W razie jest jak jest. Czekaj, coś do picia sobie wezmę. Jakby nie było, sobie zrobiłem tak, jak mi się tutaj podoba. I zaraz zobaczymy. Muzyki prawie nie słychać. Dobrze. Możemy pokręcić. Teraz będzie pewnie lepiej. Jeszcze nie wiem, jakie są tutaj, wiesz, zakresy, tak żeby to było dobrze na streamie słychać, a żebym ja się też przebijał tam ze swoim głosem. Więc na razie wszystko sobie tutaj testujemy. Znajdziemy sobie na YouTubie Diablo. Czy oni już coś wrzucili? Jakiś tam? Campfire. Xazaksa będziemy oglądać. Zrobimy incepcję. I zobaczymy, jak to nam pójdzie. Diablo Official. No dobra, jest. O, teraz rozpoznaje bicik. No. Jeszcze 18 minut tutaj. Na tym. Tutaj zrobimy teraz przejście na kamereczkę i zobaczymy, jak to będzie wyglądało. Cyk. Witam Państwa. Tutaj ze swojej nory. Powiedzmy, jak tam to wygląda. Czy to nie jest za bardzo... Chyba będzie git, mi się wydaje. Czat jest przeźroczysty. Się nie będzie nic nam tutaj na pełnym ekranie kaszanić. Powinno być cacy, nie? Starting soon. Chyba dramatu nie ma. Coś tutaj czat mogę jeszcze wykręcić trochę do góry. I będzie git. No, czekamy. Zobaczymy, co pokażą dzisiaj. Czy warto będzie to w ogóle komentować, nie? Jak bardzo nam siądzie dzisiejszy Campfire. Jakieś napisy może będą wygenerowane. Angielski tylko. No nic, zobaczymy. Zobaczymy, jak to będzie. Dobra, Masterek powiedział, że przyjdzie. Elegancko. Jeszcze sobie muszę tutaj jakieś statystyki odpalić. Wygląda git. No to zajebiście. Ogólnie odstawione 1440p. Wydaje mi się, że nie będzie nam tutaj nic ucinać ani walić. No jestem po Wi-Fi podłączony, ale mam dobre łącze i dobrą jakość. Więc nie powinno być problemu. Mam nadzieję. Jak git, to git. Jeszcze sobie jakieś statystyki zobaczę, czy... Jak to odpalić tutaj? YouTube Studios. Okay. Taki hype, że zapomniałeś kiedyś premiera dodatku, ale hype na co? Na ten Vessel of Hatred? Masz taki hype? Czy na tego WoWa? Da się to serduszko wyłączyć? Tutaj trochę zasłania ten czat. O! Dobra, teraz będę widział elegancko. Tutaj chyba trochę czat przycina, mi się wydaje. Poprawimy. Dobra, jest git. Nic nie ruszam, bo popsuję. No, zaraz się wszystko okaże. Co oni tam nawymyślali, nie? Co oni tam nawymyślali? Co to będzie? Proszę państwa. Będzie dobrze. No na wesela. Dobra, nie było po tobie po prostu, wiesz, znać. I widać, że aż taki najarany no to jesteś, nie? Nowo wyszedł. Ale jakoś tak to... Do WoWa? No ponoć taki zajebisty. Piotrix aż sobie kupił miesięczny abonament. Ponoć takie zajebiste, wszystko fajnie. Ja pograłem do tego, tam nie, no niski level miałem na 20 któryś. Ten co starter daje, nie? Czy nawet nie 20 któryś, 17 może. Nie wiem do którego levela jest starter. Jak już na początku mi się bardzo podobało, a potem jak się zaczęły te dinozaury i te Azteki, to tak jakoś takie tam... Kiedy indziej. Strategie mi jakoś bardziej podchodzą z tego WoWa niż te MMO. Pomimo, że też się najarałem, nie? Bo i sobie ściągnąłem moda, żeby grać na padzie. Eleganckiego. Nie pamiętam jak on się nazywa, ale tak fajnie wszystko... Siema Jarheadzik. Tak fajnie wszystko na tego pada, wiesz, mapował, że normalnie console experience było. Sobie na tym Legionie, czy wtedy jeszcze na Steam Decku chyba odpalałem. Wywalony na kanapie. Jak wiesz, król. I ogień, nie? Także było całkiem fajnie. Ale gdzieś mi czegoś tam zabrakło. Albo po prostu te questy i ten grind mnie jakoś chyba... No, questy i grind na niskim levelu, ale no nie wiem, jakoś nie mogą się przez to przebić. Ten klimat tego jakoś mi nie siadł po prostu. Ja chciałem lizać ściany i wszystko, nie? No podebrał. Bywa. Ważne, że wy jesteście. Słuchajcie. Jeszcze tam rzuciłem info na paru tych kanałach, może jacyś ludzie przyjdą w ogóle z nami niezwiązani, a jak nie, to po prostu tak sobie tutaj zostaniemy. Jeszcze Master ma wpaść. Piotrix chyba też się dołączy. Piotrix Endgame'u nie dotknął? No zakładam, że... Chociaż no nie wiem, w sumie on tam mówi, że tyle w to grał. To chyba walił ten Endgame jakoś, nie? Jakoś to musiało chyba tam sprawiać mu przyjemność. Bo długo grał. Tak mi się wydaje. Przyjdzie, to się go zapytamy zresztą, co tutaj będziemy wiedzieć. Mówicie o Poe? Nie, mówimy o WoWie. Jarheadzie. A czekaj, a tutaj jest muzyczka z tego? A, tu jest muzyczka, dobra. Ten Tristan Remix się w ogóle skończył. Dam sobie głośniej. No i co? I sobie poczekamy chwilę. 10 minut i zaraz zaczynamy. Aha. Czego się spodziewacie? Właśnie, bo bingo chciałem zrobić. Mamy jeszcze 10 minut. Zróbmy bingo. I zobaczymy, co nam się trafi. Bingo Maker? Może jest coś takiego? 5 na 5 nam starczy? Chyba starczy, nie? Nie będziemy przesadzać. Free Bingo Card Generator. O, elegancko. Jak to się zaznacza? Mogę sobie wpisać tutaj co chcę, tak? Klikam generate. Okej. Przecieki na DC. Runy. Dobra, runy. Mamy pierwsze. Wpisujemy na pierwsze ten. Czekajcie, sobie wezmę ten klawiaturę tutaj na... żeby mi się łatwiej pisało. Weźmiemy wszystko z dużych liter. Runy. Pierwsze. Dobra, następne. Co jeszcze? Runy. Ten armory. Zobaczymy, czy będzie armory, tak? Ja to jest kopium, ja wiem. Armory, czy będzie. Następne. Paragony od pierwszego levela. Ok. Paragony od pierwszego levela. Następne. Dawaj, co tam będzie? Paragony. Co oni jeszcze wrzucali? Z przeciekami. Loot filter. Standardowo. Loot filter. Cyk. Co tam jeszcze? Loot filter. Będzie... Słuchamy graczy, tak. Słuchamy graczy. Słuchamy graczy. To na pewno będzie. Że słuchamy graczy. Runy, armory. Suby chciała nieskończony paragon, ale wątpię, że takie coś będzie. Zresztą mówili, że nie będzie, więc tutaj raczej nie ma co dodawać. Armory. Może coś takiego... Kurde, nie mogę sobie przypomnieć, co oni też... Z tych wszystkich filmików, które wrzucali nawet Rob, albo... Zmiana z itemizacji. Ale co zmiana z itemizacji? To jest... Zmiana będzie progresji, nie? Siema Piotrix. To jest zdróweczko. Co tu się dzieje? O, zaczęło się. Ale taki filmik tylko leci. Vessel of Hatred, to jeszcze nas chyba nie. Dobra. Bingo robimy, Piotrix. Dawaj tutaj te. A, żółte przedmioty, dobra, czyli... Jak to napisać tak łatwiej? Ulepszony kraj. No dobrze, niech będzie jakiś ulepszony... Ulepszony crafting. Nowa itemizacja. Low tier napiszę, że będzie wiadomo, że tych przedmiotów białych, żółtych. I co tu jeszcze? Co oni tu pokazują? A, to już był. Jeszcze dwa, to zrobimy 3 na 3. 3 na 3. Kurwa, zjebało się. 5 na 5.
The Hollows are a new enemy that's associated with Mephisto. They themselves are kind of like a tar-like substance creature born straight out of the depths.
Coś takiego, żeby napisać, że w dodatku tylko ta cytadela będzie i klasa nowa i nic więcej w dodatku, a wszystko wróci do głównej gry. Albo coś niezapowiedzianego. Takiego dobrego. Niespodzianka napiszę. Niespodzianka po prostu. Coś takiego, że nikt nie wiedział, nikt się nie spodziewał. Coming soon. Dobra, i coming soon może być. I coming soon. Słuchamy graczy, loot filter, paragony pierwszego levela, armory, ulepszony crafting, runy, jakaś niespodzianka, nowa itemizacja low tierów i coś na coming soon, wiadomo, public, dobra, background generate. No dobra, jest bingo. I co, sobie mogę klikać? Jak jest preview. Play online.
We're bringing them back in a new way here as a fully fleshed out monster family with multiple classes.
what a more
Ale
brute
co, to jest
force looks
preview.
like, what a
A jak
caster
mogę to
looks
grać?
like. They are very much apex predators, and we're definitely in their territory. And then there's a little sub-area called the Skittering Earth.
Dobra, to inaczej to zrobimy. Zrobię to tak i zrobię sobie print screena i w Paincie będziemy odznaczać.
The jungles and kind of input their
Cyk.
influence on it. Within the Field of Giants, you have these giant corpses
Painta
of these
odpalimy.
long-dead demons that humans have begun
Z
to mine
czarnym
away at for their
backgroundem.
resources. While they've got a lot of use out of them, they're also toxic to the land around it.
Będzie dobrze widać, nie? Tam na czerwono i będziemy zaznaczać mazakrę.
Plateaus also
Co trafione,
have
a
just
co
this
nie.
beautiful color scheme to the lighting. It's really lovely to be there. And then horrific at the same time, you know, it's great.
The mercenaries in Vessel of Hatred are a group of people who we like to describe as
Dobra,
ordinary
mamy bingo.
people with extraordinary skills. They have the same level of will to fight against demons of hell.
Sobie
There's 4
włączymy.
mercs that you can collect over the course of the campaign. Starts with
Zobaczymy.
Rahir, a blacksmith and a shield bearer is more defensive.
Więcej MTX-ów.
He's able to
Drzewko
go in
skilli
there and
powiększone.
soak up damage, use his shield as a bulwark against
Chyba
the
u Barbera był przed streamem. No a jak? Cześć, bo tutaj pisaliście coś. Torment 13. Kurde, no nowe rzeczy. Dobra, widzisz, dopisać. Dobra, dopiszemy. Edit.
Subo, the drunken
Zrobimy.
archer, is gonna work really well for
Torm-
people who want someone who's
Torment
out with the main
13.
melee, in the back, offering utility
Co wy tam jeszcze
and
pisaliście?
support.
Drzewko skilli powiększone, no ale to raczej będzie na pewno powiększone. Więcej MTX-ów. Dopisz Kruchol jeszcze drzewko. No dobra, dopiszemy drzewko, Jarhead, specjalnie dla ciebie. Dopiszemy, że nowe drzewko, albo
She's got a bunch of really interesting
większe
utility skills that you can kind of build in.
drzewko skilli. Skilli. Kurde, Kruchol mordeczkę pokazał. No jest mordeczka, no co, ma być profesjonalny stream.
To
jest mordeczka. Zresztą, kto chciał, to mnie widział. Siema, master. Dobra, tyle będzie git? I to się tak wszystko do tych runów. Czyli jeszcze raz. Generate. Save. Robimy nowego print screena.
Going through each mercenary progression arc and outfitting their skill tree so that it's complementary to your character build. I think that's where the fun in the mercenary system really
Armory,
lies.
Surrenderator. No zobaczymy, nie? Jak to będzie.
The Dark Citadel is a new endgame feature that's coming in Vessel of Hatred. It's an entirely cooperative player experience. All the mechanics within it are based around you working together with your party members to solve the challenges and face the first Khazra hordes within.
One of the outcomes of the Mage Wars is this giant crater and all the souls that were kind of lost in
Dobra,
it from
teraz
those
jest okej.
wars.
The goal of the first Khazra, who are kind of the original
Co oni tu gadają?
Khazra,
Ogólnie dobrze słychać mnie i to, jak oni teraz tam w tle są.
found within this crater to perform experiments to try and bring back their dark god.
Only recently, people have started going missing.
Na pewno dopowiedzą. Idę o piwo. Może być. Wiadomo, co to będzie, proszę państwa, dzisiaj? Co to będzie?
What is the best part of Diablo, combat, and we test it in a different way, which is adding in cooperative mechanics that you have to manage on top of that.
For example, a boss has an attack, and as a player, you have to collect an item that allows you to reflect the attack back at him. So there's a little bit of a Twitch level mechanic there where you actually have to time your reaction shot. What's interesting about it is when you get multiple people in there, we're each responsible for reflecting that shot once, so we all have to sort of master the timing of that move. You can't do that kind of thing without coordinating as a team, and that's sort of the example of what's.
Już widzę tą koordynację tego. Ich to może wyciszyć. Ale jako jest ogólnie głośno jest do tego, jak na przykład mówię? Tak jeszcze tak technicznie się zapytam. Ja tak słyszę w słuchawkach w miarę okej.
We also have a currency that's dedicated to the Citadel,
Sam raz, no i
where, as you
elegancko.
play through, a vendor can be interacted with to buy custom cosmetics.
Zobacz,
that
jakie
are
kosmy...
unique.
O, MTX-y. Są MTX-y.
Two people,
To już się zalicza?
the ideal experience
Do
is for
MTX-ów?
four, but in order to facilitate that,
Daj sobie
we
gdzieś tego
built an
painta
all-new
tutaj,
party
żeby
finder
miał to
feature.
bingo
And
na
the
boku.
community has been pretty vocal about wanting this for a long time. It made a lot of sense to us to pair it with this new Citadel mode.
It really is an activity that's geared towards people who love to play together with their friends or with strangers and enjoy that cooperative gameplay.
A nie wpisałem ostatecznie
I
tego
cannot wait for
MTX.
players to get into the
Dobrze.
world. I'm really just excited for people to see all the little hidden storytelling elements that the team has fit in.
So there's interesting things to
No,
find
spoko,
and see and
spoko.
discover
Da mi
around
trochę.
every corner, and it's just a really great experience.
Sam siebie
getting
mogę
to
też trochę
explore the
wyciszyć,
house.
żeby ewentualnie... Że jak nie będę, żeby nie drzeć mordy, nie? Nigdy nie zaczną, no zobaczymy, nie? Co tutaj będzie. Oho!
Hello,
So.
Diablo
Hey,
community.
lecimy.
Welcome to another Campfire chat. This is the patch
Siemaxu.
2.0 Campfire chat for PTR. As you guys can see, we're in a little bit of a new environment. We're all doing this from home.
Matsu, jesteś
We
idealnie.
had to do a quick last minute pivot about 24
Ten po
hours
środku
ago.
to chyba ten.
I was
Wygląda
struck
jakby
by
ledwo
some
studia
con
skończył.
flu after Gamescom, but
Expert
I
game
just wanna
designer.
give a quick shout out to our production
Ziomek
teams
tutaj.
behind the scenes. Lucas, Jade, and Rich, they made a quick pivot to allow us to do this and for us to be safe
Każdy na
and to
chacie.
be able to still
Fajnie.
give you guys this exciting information for patch 2.0. But to lead us off, I do want us to do some quick
Daj
intros
ich
for
głośniej.
everyone here
Dobra.
on the actual panel.
Już ich daję
So
głośniej.
Colin, would you like to start off the intros?
Yeah, sure. I'm Colin on the design team.
Hi, Colin.
Hello, I'm Aislinn Hall. I'm a systems designer with a focus on live balance.
Hey everyone, I'm Charles Dunn. I'm a class designer working on the live balance for Diablo 4.
No jeszcze podkręciłem głos ich.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeevan Sidhu, and I also work on the systems team.
Awesome. So we got a whole panel here, way more than what we normally have because we have so much to actually cover. We do
Teraz
want to
dobrze
jump
dźwięk?
into things pretty immediately, but I did want to recap really quickly.
Odpalamy
Obviously,
browara
last
teraz.
week we were at Gamescom. We made some really big announcements for Vessel of Hatred, where we announced, the mercenaries that will be coming to Vessel of Hatred, along with how that system works with like reinforcements. It's like a new take of how mercenaries play within Diablo,
Entuzjazm
especially since
odbije.
mercenaries have such a storied history
Trochę tak.
within the franchise itself. And of course, we also talked about
Wasze
the
zdrówko.
Cuirass Undercity and the Dark Citadel, along with the
Dzięki, że
Party Finder
wpadliście.
feature that players will be able
Będziemy się
to
dobrze bawić.
actually
Muszę tego
partake
browara
in
w jakimś
with
tam
Vessel of
strategicznym
Hatred and
miejscu
use that
odłożyć.
for Dark Citadel and other
Tutaj
features
i
within the
zobaczymy.
game. We do actually have a blog up on Diablo4.com that does do a good deep dive across all of those specific items, so you guys can actually check that out. But we have a packed agenda today. This will be a long one, so we hope that everyone will
Jesteśmy
sit
podekscytowani.
down and grab a snack and join us as we talk about some pretty large systemic changes that will be coming with Diablo 4, along with some new stuff that we'll be sharing as well that will also be coming with Diablo 4. So we're going to start off with some progression updates. We're going to move off into some class and balance changes, along with some quality of life updates. And then we'll kind of cap
Quality
it
of
off
life.
with a cool new announcement that will be coming with Vessel.
Niespodzianka.
So
Cool new announcement.
Aislinn, Colin, I know you guys want to jump into some of these big progression changes that you guys were talking about last week. So
Nie
take
będzie
it away.
recapu żadnego? Co tu się dzieje w
Thanks,
ogóle?
Adam. And I'm sure everyone has no idea what the big surprise is at the end.
None whatsoever.
So yeah.
Dawaj,
Yeah.
dawaj, młody.
So yeah, let's jump into the progression.
Razu,
So
progression.
when we launched the
Nie
game,
poznaję.
we had a sort of vision for the game that we felt like was really fun to play through once, where you'd sort of traverse through these world tiers and you'd be gaining new sacred items rarely, and then you'd be getting ancestral items when hopping into World Tier 4. And as we played the game more and more, and as we've gotten feedback, that necessarily hasn't really been super fun. So we've sped up a lot of the progression to sort of get you into that space that where you feel powerful, where you have autonomy over your choice in terms of difficulty
Alting.
and
Oh, proszę.
challenge and reward. Diablo is all about that progression, right? And sort of blasting and feeling efficient. So we wanted to take a step back after looking at
A
itemization.
teraz jako
We've
double
added a
down
ton
on
of
what is fun.
itemization progression,
Blasting. Przecież
that
giereczka
we
miała
think
być
is feeling pretty good. There's a lot of ways to
powolna,
customize your
nie?
character. There's
Ale
a lot of ways
blasting
to
ma być
progress your
blasting.
itemization. And we wanted to look at other aspects of the game. So that came in the form of like what hasn't aged super well. what are the things that we really enjoy and we see that you all enjoy, and doubling down on that. So 2 of those things are difficulty and overall just character progression from your paragons, your glyphs, etc. We've sort
Myślicie, że zrobią grę
taken the approach of
trudniejszą
like
na
really
początku,
doubling down and embracing
żeby nie będzie
again what
takiego,
has been really
takiego
fun, right? Last,
przebiegnięcia po
being
prostu, że w
efficient,
WT3,
having control over your
czy
challenge
będzie w
and
ogóle
move forward,
WT3,
right? Profane mind
będzie w
cages
ogóle
is awesome.
potrzebne?
You can stack it to 3,
Że
and
albo
you can hop
zostaniemy
into
tam na
those health
dłużej?
highs and just start getting tons of experience and reward for pushing that challenge. Key dungeons like Nightmare Dungeons, Infernal Hordes, really pretty much every endgame in the system at this point has a tiering system associated with it, and we think that's like pretty indicative of like what has been fun, and we want to embrace that. And part of that is,
Ale kiedy masterek
you
jest
know,
to
that
później?
idea of
Kiedy
I
już
can
masz setny
push really
level
hard to
i
get more
lecisz
efficiency.
taki
Part of that's
endgame,
conquering milestones,
żeby
right?
wydropić
It's really good.
macy,
It's a
żeby
ton of fun
ulepszyć
to
już swój
hop into
gear,
World Tier 3
czy żeby
early.
dopiero idziesz po
I
ten
think I
gear?
hopped in at level 25 in the latest
Ja bym
release
chciał, żeby
just
było
to see if
trudniej
I could
iść po
do
ten
it.
gear
It was
też.
a ton of fun.
Wydaje mi się.
And it's sort of all about embracing that gaining
Bo
power
teraz to tak.
in multiple ways, feeling super powerful. And then another thing that we really wanted to look at in terms of making this better is alting. We made a change to make it so that the mythic uniques could be equipped at level 35, and if you've done that, it's a really badass experience where you know, roll a barbarian, slap your grandfather on him, and you just blast through the leveling experience, and it's a ton of fun.
No ale master, bądźmy szczerzy.
That being said,
Na
we've
początku,
added
jak nie masz
tons of
gieru, czyli
sort
kiedy?
of,
Wypada ci pierwsza skrzynka,
power to the equation,
dostajesz
and
tam
we
od razu
wanted to make sure
aspekty.
that we
Teraz w
also
sumie
gave
przez
you
to,
more
że sezon
autonomy
jest
to sort of challenge yourself
taki
with
dający
all
ci
that
te
new power,
itemy, to
and we're
zawsze
adding
ci z
a
jakiejś
ton of new
skrzynki
power
gdzieś
in
coś
the
tam dropi,
expansion
więc
as
to jest
well.
kwestia,
So
nie wiem,
to
pół godziny,
cover it
20
again,
minut,
right,
już
we
masz
want to look
taki
at
gier, takie
expanding
aspekty,
the
że
progression
praktycznie
in
wszystko na
other
strzała
areas of
leci.
the game come patch 2.0. So with that, Aislinn actually has a bunch of exciting changes to talk about here.
I do. Thank you, Colin.
30 minut.
Okay, everyone, I want you to put on your thinking caps because we have a lot of
Thinking
details
caps.
to cover.
Czy to było
So
nawiązanie do
buckle
pewnego
up.
przedmiotu z Diablo?
We in fact have a topic
Wyłapałem to,
screen here
wyłapaliście
because
to
there's
też?
so many things regarding progression that we're going to be talking about today. So the way that we're approaching this presentation is we're basically going to be bringing you through what a character's journey would actually look like. You know, starting by talking about the character journey and then talking about some difficulty
Znowu to
tier
jest wykład.
changes
Dlaczego
that are
oni robią
coming,
mi wykład,
and then
jak
going
podchodzą i jak
deeper
to rozkminiają?
into,
No,
you
i
know,
tak nie ma
how
nikt
you're
na
going
to
to be
wpływu, bo to są ich
gaining
jakieś wewnętrzne rozterki.
more
Niech pokażą, jak
rewards
już, co
from those
zrobili.
said difficulty tiers. So
Ale zobaczcie,
yeah,
podzielmy
without
to.
further
Difficulty,
ado, let's
character,
simply jump in
paragony,
and
czyli
get
te 4 rzeczy
started
zostaną,
with the
rozumiem,
character
zmienione.
journey.
Okay.
Okay, so some changes coming to
Okay.
how you're going to be leveling up. There's going to be a level adjustment, first of all, coming to patch 2.0. Right now in the live game, you know, you go from character
Siema,
level 1 to
Sonuś.
50. Those are your skill point levels. And then every level after
No
50
dobra, no level
is a paragon
60,
level
to
where
już
you're earning 4
wiedzieliśmy.
paragon points per paragon level. We're going to be splitting those out in patch 2.0.
No wnioski.
And so you're going to earn paragon points, which are going to be separate from your character level. Levels 1 to 50 represent those character levels. And there's also going to be a new max character level, quote unquote, of level 60. And that means that you are going to be
1 do
earning
100.
10 more skill points
Okay.
from what you had been earning pre-patch 2.0. There's also going to be a reimagined pace to the leveling journey. So we have a lot of new difficulty tiers that are being added to the game. More on that soon. But effectively, lower difficulty tiers are going to be offering you a slower pace if you're a near player, you just want a very casual, chill experience. But you're going to be able to bump it up if you want to. Like if you're, you know, engaging with tempering, you're engaging with all these systems that are making your character stronger, and you want something to test that against, we're aiming to give that to you. And these
No to się
difficulty
Basil z
tiers
tobą
are going to
zgadzam.
be
Docelowo
offering
powinniśmy wszystko
you
walić na hita. A takie jest.
improved efficiency, improved
To powinien być już taki
rewards,
bis,
and
bis,
the
bis,
goal
nie?
is to
Powinno być to
improve
osiągalne,
the pace
moim
to
zdaniem.
blast through these
Diablo.
difficulties.
Ale dojście do tego, no
Yeah,
powinno
this
to
Now,
is
trwać
there's-
dłużej.
the
yeah.
mind cages, right? Like we sort of heard, yeah, we heard you like mind cages, so we put it in the game systemically, like from whispers to
Ja
hell
nie
tides,
zrozumiałem, bo oni to
literally
podzielili
everything.
na
Like maybe
dwie,
you like doing
tą
dungeons,
stówę.
and really it's sort of like giving players that choice to do what they want, and it's not just hell tide now that can push that difficulty.
Yeah, totally. Like we were just playing on the development team, and we were playing in Helltides and playing with
No
Mind
tutaj
Cubes, and we were
napisane.
like, this is great.
Level od 1 do 50.
Like I want to just be able
character
to do
level.
this or like have this option available to me, like basically whenever I'm playing. So that's a big part of these
Nowy jest
changes.
60, czyli z
Moving on
60,
here
tak?
to the number adjustments. So as a lot of you guys found in footage, yes, there is a pretty substantial number
Torment
adjustment.
13, no.
So a big part of
Ale nie,
this
jest
is
taki
we want to
hard,
make sure
expert
that
and
there's room
penitent,
for
czyli
growth. And we're adding a
w sumie
lot
to co
of
było, tylko
player
inaczej to na razie
power
nazwali
in
chyba.
patch 2.0 and Vessel of
Może jeszcze
Hatred.
easy będzie jakiś.
And we want to make sure that numbers don't get so crazy
Właśnie też
that
tego,
we
Piotrix, nie
cannot
rozumiem, że od 1 do
fathom
50, czy to jest
them,
jakby,
right?
jak staro
And
było?
so a big part of this
Ale maksymalny
is
level jest 60, czyli
giving
co?
us a good starting point in patch 2.0 where we can afford to
Ja
grow
tak tego nie
numbers.
rozumiem.
So
yeah. Aislinn, I think it's really important, to have numbers that are like when you're like doing damage numbers to see ones that are meaningful to you, right? If you're increasing your damage like even 10x, but it's taking it from like an 8 or 9 digit number to a 10-digit number, it's almost impossible to see that kind of growth in player power. So with numbers that are more readable on screen, that A, makes it much more obvious when you're getting more powerful, and just makes the game as a whole easier to kind of comprehend.
To wiecie, oni mówią, że to będzie mniejsze liczby, ale to nie jest też problem, że te liczby są duże. Problem jest też, że te liczby pojawiają się z prędkością 150 liczb na sekundę. I czy to będzie tam miliard, czy tam będzie setki, to i tak nie będziesz tego widział, nie? Już tych nawet endgame'owych buildów. Żebyś bił, nie wiem, po 1500, powiedzmy.
More grounded numbers for longer. That's not to say that you aren't going to get insane in the deep end game, right?
No ten na dole sprawy taki wygląda jak ten hinduska pomoc techniczna, nie?
Yeah, you're still going to have a lot of power to game. And yeah, finally, just going back to this first bullet here on this slide, we're going to talk more about Paragon
Hello,
later,
my friend.
but for now we're going to focus
How I can
on
help you?
some other things. So sit tight. Okay, let's talk about how monsters are changing. So we've streamlined monster health and damage in a pretty big way. We took a look at how monsters gain health and how they gain damage over
fixed HP, czyli że nieco, nie będzie level scalingu? Czy o co chodzi?
Kind of universalized our approach to how they're gaining power throughout your character experience. And this is going to be applying to all monster types. Normal monsters, minions, which are elites' little buddies, elites themselves, and of course bosses. And all of these monsters now have health that's relative to their normal monster counterpart on any given difficulty tier. And what this does is it really helps smooth difficulty progression and the difficulty of any experience.
A to też jest takie, wiecie, z tym scalingiem to jest takie coś, że oni teraz zrobią, że żaden potwór, czy elita, czy boss nie będzie odstawał od reszty, bo to wszystko będzie znowu takie wyrównane, no. Nie będzie takiego takich skrajności, które są czasami fajne, nie?
And the big thing here is that monsters are always going to match the player level now. So on live, we have a world where monsters can be, 100 levels offset of you and anywhere in between. And that can be fairly hard to understand. And so a big part of this pass is kind of removing that element of the game so that we can focus on what difficulty we're currently in and using that as the judge of how hard or how easy or wherever in between the content you're currently in is. And finally, we have some pretty cool combat tuning changes. So we've taken a lot of looks
tak, z tego co jest tutaj napisane, no wynika, że dużo zmian będzie do tego, jak będziemy czuli się w walce, jak to będzie wpływało na naszą postać, ale no nie wiem, mi się wydaje, że przez oni tego power creepa nie ogarną, nie zrobią tego. I oni tutaj mogą sobie mówić, że oni tutaj zrobią jakieś slidery, będzie fajniej, będzie bardziej, te mechaniki potworów będą bardziej znaczące, ale jedyne co to będzie znaczące, to tylko wpadasz, blast, wszyscy giną, lecisz dalej i to będzie w zasadzie tyle. Ale sprawdzimy, PTR będzie pewnie.
Yeah, it was definitely a pain point. Great call.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, just saying, right, that's always been the pain point in the pit so far is like, hey, you're really strong, you blast through most of the dungeon, and then you get up to the boss, and the boss takes, 5 minutes or more. That's just like such a slog.
Wiesz, wiary, ja mam dużo wiary w nich, ale
in a given difficulty tier, you're
Czemu
gonna
zawsze
have a
muszę
more consistent experience across boss and other
być
portions of the game.
rozczarowany?
Yeah, and we've already taken a lot of steps towards this. In one of the previous seasons, we set it so that you wouldn't get armor cap penalties as the monster is leveled higher than you, right? So this is really just sort of consolidating a lot of the, I'm going to get shit for the Blizzard math, on the back end to make sure that like a lot of the things are really being reworked on the back end to address the problems we see on live with the crazy exponential scaling of boss health from like 4 different multipliers.
Nie macie wrażenia, że wcześniej jak było mówione, że jesteśmy takim, że to jest jak na jakimś wykładzie albo na jakimś spotkaniu na Teamsie, to teraz jak oni są podzieleni te kamerki i każdy z nich, trochę też się sam czuje jakby był na takim spotkaniu z nimi i po prostu każdy się przełącza i mówi nam, co myśli o grze i to jest takie...
Very soon, in fact.
O, difficulty
Like right
tiers.
now. Difficulty
Like
tiers.
right now.
O, lecimy. Mamy to w bingo.
So this is our beautiful Blizzard illustration, if you will, of
Art by
current day
Colin.
difficulty.
Bardzo
Art by
ładnie.
Colin, thank you very much.
Gotta call out Colin. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
no.
We've got
We're gonna
the
get art for this.
This is art. What are you talking about?
yeah, this
is
is
beautiful.
Tutaj
Modern
mamy
art.
nasze bingo. Torment 13
yeah, you can see
czeka.
we have the big bone boss. Very, very sad at the current state of things up there. So what this is basically illustrating is that there are basically brackets right now on live where various content is relevant. You have world bosses that stay relevant for a certain amount of time. You have Helltide that stays relevant.
Ale jak, no
you know,
world
maybe a
bossy
little
przecież
bit
wali
longer
się
than
cały
world bosses
czas.
do. And then you have world tiers 1 and 2. Then you have world tier 3, which is, you know, very sad. Sorry, world tier 3.
Yeah.
I ty też
and
powinny
then
być
World
teraz
Tier
smutne
4.
w tym
Magnifying glass,
sezonie.
you can see it.
Yeah, maybe if you look really closely, you can see how long it takes to go through World Tier 3. And then World Tier 4, which has like a bit of a tail, but still pretty short. And then we compare it to like where our character's power currently exists, which is, you know, you've got level 1 to 100, and then of course your journey throughout all of the pit tiers. And basically what this is illustrating is a lot of these content types fall off. World bosses don't stay relevant forever. Helltide doesn't stay relevant forever. The world tiers you're living on in the open world don't stay relevant.
Ej, ja nie jestem
And
chyba zdania, że
eventually it
Helltide
simply
nie jest
becomes
relevant. Jak
about
wprowadzili te
running the
mózgi,
pit,
to
and that's the place where you can judge
teraz
your
się fajnie robi
characters.
tego Helltide'a. Leci
We don't
dużo rzeczy.
necessarily want the game to work that way.
Stal
We
się tam
want a lot
farmi.
of activities to stay fun and interesting and engaging for as long as possible.
Whispersy teraz tam
And so
dodali,
to
więc się opłaca
accomplish
też na
that,
Whispersy to iść.
We've
No nie
got
wiem,
some
trochę takie
pretty
to,
big changes coming to difficulty tiers.
skąd te dane biorą, chyba że po prostu nie wiem.
So let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this. Talking
Let's do
about
this.
pit arbitration.
O jest,
That's just a
Torment 4,
fancy
czekaj,
way of
czekaj,
basically
15.
saying that the pit is going to be something behind the scenes that's setting the pace of all difficulty in the game across all content types.
Colin gra, to widać.
So pit tiers are going to match difficulty tiers. There's going to be 5 pit tiers per standard difficulty, which is just encapsulating 4 new world tiers pre-level 60, which are normal, hard, expert, and penitent. And then there will be 15 pit tiers per torment difficulty. And there are going to be 4 torment difficulty tiers.
4
1, 2,
Tormenty,
3,
nie będzie
4.
Torment 13.
Difficulty tiers are going to derive monster health, damage, and
Zaliczamy
intensity
bingo?
from the pit tier that is associated with that
Zmienimy
difficulty.
tutaj, że
I know that's a little
4.
complicated, but we're going to have some supporting stuff to show what this means a little
Może
better
być.
pretty soon.
I w
And I do
kółeczko
want to call
zrobię.
out intensity here. Colin, do you want to talk about monster intensity raising between difficulty tiers?
Mamy.
Yeah, so intensity is something we
Mamy
played
jedno
around
bingo.
with in the base game, and it's sprinkled out throughout the game. But what intensity is it's a backend system that controls monster aggressiveness as well as monster intelligence. So by aggressiveness, it's things like they attack faster, they have lower cooldowns, they move faster. And then intelligence is they predict your movement more, they'll face you more. So if you know, it has a big swing, it's actually going to try and track you a little bit more accurately. So it's not just the health and damage that's going up through these difficulty tiers. The monsters are actually becoming a little bit more dynamic and fast-paced. We think that feels pretty good, especially when it's sort of scaling through.
Następne. Monsters are more dynamic and fast-paced. Jestem bardzo
Yeah,
ciekawy.
this is something we do have on the live game, but you know, in the new patch 2.0, you're really going to feel that difference. Currently, you feel a little bit of difference in between the
Nie,
different world
wyczuliście
tiers,
jakąś
and that's just
różnicę,
going to be
jak biliście
magnified,
mobki, że one
and
są
your
bardziej,
moment
nie wiem,
combat it's not just going to be higher numbers. The
agresywne,
moment to moment will feel different
albo jakieś,
and
nie wiem, mają
harder
nowe
at these
ruchy, albo
higher torment
cokolwiek.
difficulties.
Nie wiem.
Yep, they're going to become bigger jerks. As you
Wiecie, to jest taki problem, bo idziemy z trudnością wyżej, ale nasza moc też idzie wyżej.
So let's talk about difficulty gating. So this is basically how people are going to be moving through these different difficulty tiers. So the pit is going to unlock once you hit character level 60, which is the new maximum character level in patch 2.0. So pit tiers associated with standard difficulties are going to unlock immediately, which is pit tiers 1 through 20. You're going to be able to challenge all of
Ale czemu
those
oni te pity
immediately
cisną? Co
once
te
you're max
pity?
level.
Oni chyba muszą zmienić je jakoś, bo
You're going
co
to
te
need
pity
to
mi
beat
dadzą?
pit tier 20 to unlock the first torment tier.
Aha.
Once you beat pit tier 20, you're allowed to go into the overworld on torment 1. And then
Zrobili coś podobnego jak w Diablo trójce znowu. Bo tam też się odblokowywało te poziomy trudności, że Greater Rifta chyba trzeba było zrobić. Nie? Tak było. Greater Rifta któregoś tam robiłeś i mogłeś wtedy Torment na przykład 16 cisnąć z ludźmi. Bo to działało do multi. Samemu mogłeś chyba który chciałeś, ale dla ludzi musiałeś zrobić Greater Rifta na którymś poziomie. Nie, to jest to samo co w Diablo trójce. Tylko, że tutaj no trzeba to zrobić, żeby w ogóle pewnie wybrać wyższy torment.
You actually can find some of the best items in the game very early, right? Imagine if you were able to just start finding the best items in the game in World Tier 3. That's really sort of what we're talking about here. We're really speeding
Dokładnie,
up when
wracamy
you
do
can
Diablo
actually
3,
get
tylko
to
że trochę
the
inaczej,
endgame
nie?
where we've added things like the pit, we've added things like Nightmare Dungeons and more endgame activities for you to engage with and item modifications.
Trzeba by jeszcze wrócić do Diablo trójki i zobaczyć, co oni mogliby z niego wyciągnąć jeszcze i zmienić. Przychodzi mi kilka rzeczy.
Get to that point where, all right, I'm in the end game. I'm going to start looking for awesome items. I'm going to start modifying my items. So we think that like sort of represents a pretty substantial change to how you play the game.
Colin grał w grę.
Oh yeah,
For us
absolutely.
wondering why we kind of built it
Bingo
around the
wpisać
pit
powrót do D3.
and
No.
why we associated difficulty with the pit. How do y'all think about that?
To wiecie, to jest pierwsze nasze bingo, więc
Yeah, so right now the
następnym
pit is
razem
a
będzie źle.
fantastic razor to judge your character against. And I think that this overhaul is effectively turning the pit into the game's backbone, to use kind of a gruesome term, but you know, we're Diablo, so whatever. It's basically turning the pit into the game's backbone of like difficulty. And all other difficulties is kind of derived from that. And it gives us a very predictable and understandable pace for you to experience all other activities in the game based on the pit's difficulty.
No. Diablo 5.
That razor is great for pushing difficulty, right? You think about how part of what's really fun again about Diablo is that feeling of progression.
No nie wiem, w sumie to co pokazali to takie trochę
demon, killing it, getting
bez
awesome
konkretów,
loot.
nie? Takie no,
And what the
no
pit is
zmieniamy,
gonna
tu
do
się trochę
is
zmieni,
you're
ale
gonna push that
takiego
difficulty, then unlock new torment tiers, which is going to unlock more
trzeba będzie
efficiency
to
for you.
przetestować.
And you can sort of think about it as like we've added not just a World Tier 5, but a World Tier 5 and 6 as part of this torment system. And it's something we can continue to sort of evaluate and build on as characters.
Muszę trochę klimat skręcić, bo już trochę się chłodniej zrobiło na dworze. Dzisiaj masakra była 35 stopni prawie.
Yeah, and I think it's also a lot about consistency across content, right? Currently in the live game, we've got a lot of different levels of different types of things, right? You've got Nightmare Dungeon keys, you've got pit levels, you've got Infernal Horde tiers. And we just kind of realized that, hey, the pit is something that we have, really good delineation between the different levels. So you've got a wide spread of different tiers for that. And that's something we can kind of peg difficulty against across the whole game to make a more consistent experience. When you're in a certain difficulty tier, you're just going to get a more consistent experience across all activities.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when you're on Torment 2, you're going to know that all the content you're facing is on the level of Torment 2. But right now on the live game, you go into a pit tier 50 and you're like, okay, it's pit tier 50 difficulty. And then you go into a Nightmare Dungeon tier 50 and it's a totally different difficulty. And then you go into an Infernal Hordes tier 8 and you're like, wait a minute, this is extremely hard compared to these other ones. They're just not similar, right? And so we want to create a more level playing field so that difficulty is easier to understand.
Już wiem dlaczego.
It's like a kind of common language and shared experience for everyone.
Wiesz. Bo ludzie
Yeah,
casuale
that's definitely
grają,
a
tak jak ona
benefit, and it's
powiedziała.
also,
Idą sobie na
in some
Helltide'a,
sense, leveling up all
klepią
the
wszystko na
activities.
strzała,
Like,
nagle
I know that
odpalają
there's some
sobie
people
hordę,
really
level
enjoy
jakimś tam
Whispers,
i
for
jest im
example.
smutno,
Whispers
bo
just falls off.
oni są
Like,
na
if you're
strzała.
doing the
I
pit,
dlaczego?
you're
Nie?
level
Oczywiście
100,
nikt nie umie przeczytać,
you're
że
level
na
90 in
itemie
the
jest
pit.
napisane, że
Like
mobki mają
Whispers
poziom
are terrible,
160
right?
albo
Like you're not actually
180.
going to
Nie?
run Whispers when you're pushing that deep into the game. But now when sort of things are leveling up with Torment tiers, you have a place to go and sort
Teraz
of
jak na
choose the
Torment 3
efficiency
będziesz
from
wszystko bił
those
na
different
strzała, to
activities,
jesteś
if you like that
bezpieczny.
activity.
Blizzard się z
Yeah,
tobą
and this kind of
zaopiekuje.
carries over to other activities,
Wszystko jest
not just
cacy, masz
Whispers.
pampersa,
Like,
nikt
the
ci nic
whole
złego nie
topic,
zrobi.
The whole
for
world
I sobie
is
cały
almost
content możesz
yeah,
robić.
like which is another thing. Like
I nikt nie będzie
Infernal
smutny.
Hordes is something that obviously was
Bo jeszcze
introduced
przypadkiem
as
ktoś wejdzie
is
nie tam, gdzie
coming
trzeba i
back and
wdepnie
is a permanent
wiadomo
feature
co.
within the game and is also going up with the rest of the content.
Yep.
No właśnie, gość z 32k armora.
All
nie?
right.
O, są.
So let's talk
to
a
za
little
pity?
more about the details
A
of
czemu te pity?
difficulty
Przecież tych
tiers.
pitów nie robi. Po co mi te pity?
So on the
Może
right hand
coś
side here, you
zmienią.
can see this table. It's basically showing off the associated pit tier with any
O,
given
do stówy.
difficulty tier. So normal simply starts
to i
on
dobrze.
1, and then like we saw before, it goes up by 5 each time until you get to Torment tiers, at which point it goes up by 15 each time. So Torment 4 lands on 65,
Torment 4.
Torment 1 starts on 20.
Ale za szybko doszliśmy do
And in
z
light
4
of
poziomów
this,
trudności na
we
8, nie?
have changed the highest pit tier to be
A z 8
100
zaraz będzie
down from
16.
200. And this doesn't mean that the pit tier 100 is going to be the same difficulty as
Przy
it
drugim
is on
dodatku
live. It's
pewnie.
going to be harder. So each pit tier you're going up is going to be harder than it was before, effectively. And we also have this pretty neat new system where we have smart keys. And what that means is your things like Infernal Hordes or
Diablo 3.
Nightmare Dungeons.
Diablo 3,
The
zaczynasz
keys
na
to enter
pierwszym,
those
na co? Na masterze?
activities are now going to follow
Wypada
the
ci pierwszy
current
set,
difficulty tier that you're on.
Torment 8,
So if I have an Infernal Horde
dofarmiasz
key
i
and
Torment
I'm on
13 i
Torment
lecimy.
3 and I use it, I'm going to go into a Torment 3 difficulty Infernal Horde. And the same is true for Nightmare Dungeons. So we're pretty excited about that change because again, you know, coming back to all these things we've talked about where it just kind of makes things easier, just makes life easier.
Yeah, it's a
Ciekawe jak
big
się będzie
quality of
odblokowywać
life
też
change, 'cause
tormenty, bijąc te
on
pity.
live
Czy
right
mogę
now
od
you get a
razu
bunch of
wybrać sobie
sacred,
pita
you
50 i
know,
po prostu
Nightmare
odblokować
Dungeon
torment
keys,
tam
and I'm
3
sure
czy
everyone
4
runs
i
a
iść,
ton
czy
of
muszę po
World Tier 3
kolei
Nightmare Dungeons, right?
mozolnie co 2
You
poziomy mi się
definitely don't just
odblokowują
pop
wyższe
into the
pity, aż
sacred
dojdę
weapon,
tam do
but,
tego poziomu, którego chcę.
what I'm getting at is a lot of those keys just end up getting salvaged, and now when all keys can sort of carry weight through various torment tiers, getting a nightmare key is this interesting
zaraz
choice
zagrasz
of
w
like, well,
Dark
do I keep it or do I run it now?
Diablo.
Because if I keep it, I can just use it at a later
Nie będziesz
time.
musiał nawet nic
It's
kupować.
really
No.
about giving the players that choice on when do they want to run this content. We're not just going to invalidate that key and say, oh, in Torment 2, you need to find a new key to do this thing.
Tak nie przeskoczysz, nie?
So
Też mi
I
się tak
think it's
wydaje, że tak
definitely
nie
making
przeskoczysz.
key
Będzie
management a
trzeba
lot
po
easier,
kolei lecieć.
more fluid as well. One thing on the pit, Aislinn, that I think is really interesting is we definitely have rescaled the pit. Tier 100 is sort of like our 200 on live, but I think that's something that you know we definitely want to keep an eye out on PTR.
A wiesz co, myślałem o tym, że, bo ty lubisz te właśnie
Pit tiers
nieskończone paragony.
is something we can definitely revisit
I
if
wydaje
we
mi
see
się,
a
znaczy nie,
PTR that
wiadomo, to,
are insane.
to jest coś innego
It's
niż,
probably gonna
to, o
happen
czym
in
teraz
tier
powiem.
100. We
Ale
really
wydaje mi
like
się,
that
że,
it's a
że
razor and
jednak
measure
paragony oni
stick,
trochę
and we don't wanna
zamienili
take
w
that
te
away
greater
from players.
affixy.
So,
Że jednak
that's
trzeba
something that we wanna
cisnąć,
get PTR feedback
zdobywać te
and really
greater
use your
affixy,
help
w
in
nie
breaking that
krytować
system and see how far you
masterworkingiem.
can push it.
I to robi jednak
Oh, yeah,
różnicę,
that's a great
kiedy
point. And,
item ma ten
you know, like
greater
we've
affix
said
i nie.
on this stream, there are going to be a
I
lot of
jednak
new player
bardziej jest ten
power
ciężar przeniesiony na te
opportunities
itemy, nie?
coming. And so,
W paragonach jest o tyle łatwiej,
yeah,
że one zawsze
please
wpadają,
show
te
us what you
pokcziki sobie
got,
tam
as
rozdajesz,
they
nie?
say.
Cyk, chociaż no tam w ostatnich poziomach paragonów to tam były tylko 2 wybory, tak? Vitality albo
Okay,
głównego
so let's
mainstata
talk about,
wsadzałeś w trójce Diablo, nie?
let's just dive a little more into the details. I think we went over a lot of this stuff already, but we can kind of go
A to
through
też
this
ciekawe, czy
slide
pity będzie
here.
trzeba solo walić, no?
So yeah, all content in the game exists within an expanded difficulty tier selection, like we were talking about. I think an important thing to call out here is that, for example, Penitent is, if you're comparing it just
Widzicie,
to
to jest
kind of
problem, bo
understand
wszystko
what
będzie
it's gonna
w tym
look
samym
like
difficulty,
relative to
czyli od
live
razu
right
będziecie
now,
mieli dostęp do,
Penitent's kinda gonna end up
do
being
całego
like World Tier
kontentu.
2
I
if
przez
you
to
added 45 monster levels on
to
top
znowu
of
nie
it.
będzie różnicy, czy
And
to robisz
that's
Greater
intended to kind
Rifta
of be the
nawiązując do
upper
Diablo
echelon
trójki,
of like
20 czy
pre-max
150.
level,
Będzie ciągle to samo.
character leveling. So if you really want to amp up the difficulty to as hard as you can make it, like going on to Penitent is where you want to be. And this is just a lovely little visual aid. We've got some cool new icons for these difficulty tiers. Normal, hard, expert, and penitent. It gets harder as you keep going. Okay, so yeah, and we really want this to be like opt-in, not progression locked. And so the vanilla Diablo 4 difficulty tiers kind of operated as progression tiers, right? And what I mean by progression tiers is the moment you get to World Tier 3, as Colin was saying, like you
fajne.
unlock
Bo jeśli
sacred
chodzi o UI,
items
to i
and you
ten,
go into a
graficzkę, no
dungeon
to
so you can
Diablo
find a
daje
sacred
radę.
weapon. And these things
Ta
unlock
reszta
so
to nie
quickly
wiem.
and they drop so frequently that you kind of just got this huge burst of power and you never really got to feel that power.
More gold, more experience.
And we want to make sure that you
More
are like
efficiency.
feeling each upgrade you get in the game
Co
and it
oznacza
feels
more
really, really
efficiency?
punchy.
Że po prostu za tyle samo
And we really
więcej
want these new
wszystkiego
difficulty
dostajesz.
tiers to be player guided. Like we want you to be able to make your own decisions on when you're moving on to the next one and what's the right pace for you. And of course, these new difficulty tiers are going to give you improving rewards, and you're going to find more gold, more experience, and you're going to have more loot efficiency per difficulty tier. So the higher difficulty
Loot
tier you can
efficiency.
fight the game on, the more efficient your experience is going to be effectively.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
that's
so
really
Go ahead, Charles.
Good go. Yeah, I was just saying that's really like what I view as the differentiating factor between what current V4 is and in the new patch 2.0 is if you enter Torment 1, you can find the best item in Torment 1. You could complete your character and get full best in slot and everything. It's just going to take a while, right? It's going to be less efficient. You're going to be getting less loot. And whereas in the live game right now, right, you just can't find the best things in World Tier 3. You are kind of obligated to go to that World Tier 4. And now, if you're able to clear higher torments with efficiency, that's just going to be the best option for you to find the gear more efficiently, but you aren't forced into Torment 4 to find the best items in the game.
Yeah, that's something I've really liked about it is that, we get to start the end game a lot earlier with Torment, right? Because there's nothing that you're excluded from. There's no awesome piece of loot that you can't find by Torment 1. And so you get to really start to test your build
nie mogę
after
znaleźć
it's
tych
kind of
itemów
gotten some
wcześniej,
real
no to ale to po co? No,
optimization. I think
po
much
to robię
earlier
najtrudniejszy content w
into the
grze,
journey
żeby
than
zdobyć
before.
najlepsze nagrody, nie? Czemu oni to
Yeah,
rozbywają?
I couldn't agree more, Jeevan. And like a great example
Niech
of
metyki
that
lecą
is
w
what
ogóle
we're
na
doing with the
Torment
ladder
1.
bosses or the lair
Za coś tam.
bosses. All of those unlock in Torment 1. The cost to summon them is static. It remains the same throughout all the Torment tiers. And what that means is if you can beat it on a higher Torment tier, you're going to get way more uniques. So you get a handful of uniques starting in Torment 1, way more uniques in obviously Torment 4, but the cost, because it remains static, we're not going to ask you to get anything extra like a Stygian Stone. That just means as long as you can kill that Torment 4 boss, you're getting way more efficiency out of that boss. I mean, it really is like this, it feels amazing to sort of progress through those Torment tiers and just unlock way more power opportunity.
Yeah, we don't really have this differentiation of like a regular version of the late game boss, like a regular version of Duriel, and then the tormented echo of Duriel. That's not really a distinction that we have anymore. Whereas like previously it would cost more materials to summon the tormented version, but it would give more rewards. Now it's the same cost across the different torment tiers. It's just if you're able to conquer him on Torment 4, that's where you're going to get the absolute most bang for your buck in terms of resources in to loot out.
Aha, czyli tormenty będą kosztować zawsze
And I
tyle
want to
samo?
double down
Bez
on
sensu,
like
nikt ich nie będzie robił w ogóle
Torment 1
na
is where
tych
the
niższych
end game
levelach. To
starts
znowu to
now,
jest takie, nie?
and just each torment tier that you're
Będą
ascending
kitrać
is
te
making your
materiały,
end
aż
game
nie dojdą do tego Torment 4, czyli
more
Piotrix,
fun, basically.
trzeba iść na Torment 4
because you're
po
going to be
prostu i
getting
tyle.
cooler stuff or more frequently.
Ewentualnie zrobić je raz albo dwa, żeby coś ci tam wypadło i tyle. Nie? O, itemizacja.
Okay,
Uwaga.
so enough about difficulty tiers. Let's move on to some itemization
No
changes.
martwe strefy będą, dokładnie. No.
So, item strength. We have what I like to call the item power shuffle happening in patch 2.0. Items with item power above 540 are going to be adjusted
540,
to 540.
czyli jednak jeden power zostaje.
And affix bands in lieu of this, or in addition to this rather, are going to be adjusted as well. So yeah,
A nie, 750.
items at the new character level max they're gonna max out at 750. And that's not actually the highest item power that's going to be in the game, and we'll talk about that more in just a second. But most items you're going to be finding once you hit max character level will be item power 750.
To też jak Diablo trójce.
You're going to be finding much
Levele te.
better item power items
W Diablo
from levels
trójce
51
do...
to 59. There's
Tam
going
był
to
który?
be big
70,
item power
tak?
jumps.
Maksymalny.
So once you start leveling
Do
your
60
character
było
past
mały
those
power,
original
na
character
61 już
levels,
był
you're
skok,
start finding a
mega,
lot better
i
gear.
potem było to rozłożone, co 10 leveli, na 70 już było
So
takie
let's
turbo,
take a
nie?
look at what an ancestral item looks like in patch 2.0. Oh,
O, sakredów nie ma. A, mam was.
oh, could we? Yeah, let's take a look here.
Sakredy nie
real
będą
quick.
dropić.
So you'll
Czyli
notice
wywalili
here that
całe
this
WT3,
item has
wywalili do
800
śmietnika.
item power, which is 50 higher than the max 750 that I was
Co
talking
za
about
ludzie.
before. You'll also notice on the right-hand side that is the torment icon. So ancestral items can be found starting on torment 1. They're going to become more frequent as you ascend torment difficulties, but they're still going to stay pretty rare throughout all torment levels.
Ancestrale będą tak
You'll
raz
also
na jakiś
notice
czas.
that the greater affix on this item is highlighted. That is because now whenever you find an ancestral item, they're always going to have one greater affix. They can roll
zawsze
more,
będą miały.
but they will be guaranteed a single one every single time.
Okej.
So let's dive in more into the
Ancestrale to są będą z defaultu miały zawsze greater
Part
affix.
of like finding a greater affix on live right now is sometimes it's on life per second. It's like, oh, okay. Got a greater affix on life per second. But now when you see an ancestral item, it's always going to have a greater affix. And that ancestral eye power bump, the affix bump, is going to feel really good. Even if you miss that affix, it's still a huge upgrade to your character if you haven't found one of these before.
Yeah,
Totally.
and sometimes, right, you get an item that has multiple greater affixes on live, and it's it's not at 925, it's not at the highest item power, and that's kind of a mixed bag, right? Like, well, it's kind of good, but it's a lower item power. And now things with greater affixes will be definitionally at that highest item power.
Yes.
Ciekawe. Adam ciągle uśmiechnięty.
Okay, so let's talk about the details here. So sacred items are not going to drop anymore. They're kaput. You're going to be looking at normal items pre-torments, and then you're going to be chasing ancestral items once you are in torment tiers. So yeah, starting in torment 1, they're going to start to drop. As I said, they're going to become more common as you go up, but again, they're going to stay fairly rare. They're never going to, be like the only thing that's dropping. Ancestral items are intended to be where you're finding forever items.
Dwa temperingi tylko na ancestralach będą i mają być rzadkie. Ciekawe.
Of whatever slot that you may not have an ancestral item for.
I
That's
do
going to be a big
12 z
moment. That's
czwórki.
going to be an exciting moment where
To
you're
będą
going to get
OP.
something a
Znaczy,
lot better.
jak ci dropnie, no to
Because they
faktycznie
also
moc.
have their own affix band as well. So these ancestral items are going to have better affixes than their non-ancestral counterparts too.
I aspektum będą miały
Something to
wyższe,
note is that
tak?
greater
Ale aspekt...
affixes only drop on ancestral items. You're not going to be finding greater affixes on non-ancestrals. So when you see a greater affix drop
Znaczy, wiesz,
on the
łatwiej,
ground,
nie łatwiej,
you're
ale
going to know
chodzi o
that
to,
is an
że
ancestral item. Ancestral items also have 2 tempering slots
dużo
up
mocy
from
przybędzie,
1
jak ci
on
ancestral
non-ancestrals.
wypadnie.
And they're master workable up to 12, whereas non-ancestrals are master workable up to 4. And finally, they are going to have higher aspect ranks too. So you're going to find legendary aspects that become
Do aspektów już
better
wszystkich tak
on
nie
ancestral
wymasterujesz.
items.
Moim zdaniem to jest spoko z tymi aspektami, no bo teraz to
Charles, we
praktycznie
actually added a
wszystkie aspekty masz na maksa, to w ogóle nie patrzysz na to. To wszystko do kowala leci jak leci,
readjust
nie?
where those power bands are coming from.
Yeah, all of the legendary aspects that now scale a little bit further into the ancestral tier. We basically just tacked on 5 new levels
dobra, to
on
jest
top
spoko
of
nawet.
the current value. So you're just going to find even more powerful legendary effects than you have currently in the new ancestral tier.
Spoko jest, że w końcu są itemy, które jak ci dropnie, to powiesz
It's going to be a lot of fun to find those.
I go zakładasz i od razu bijesz 2 razy.
Okay. Let's move on to Paragon. So we have some pretty big glyph
Glyphy.
updates coming
Spirit.
with patch 2.0. There's been a significant rework to how many ranks you can earn on any given
100 rank. No to farmimy Nightmare
from
Dungi.
21 to 100, which is a lot of new
Farmimy
ranks.
Nightmare Dungi.
But we want to make sure that there's still texture in that system, right? And so because of that, we also have a new a new glyph
Że rangi
rarity, legendary.
upgrade'ują na 46.
So
Aha, czyli
once
to
you
nie są osobne
upgrade a
glify, to po
glyph
prostu
to
jest
rank
ranga się zwiększa.
46, it becomes a legendary
Jezu.
glyph, which you can see here on the right. This spirit glyph is level 50.
Jeszcze radius
so
się
it's
zwiększa
past that 46
dwukrotnie.
mark, it's legendary.
Radius size 5.
You're going to get a glyph radius increase at rank
Boże.
15, which is already in the live game. But you're also going to get another radius increase at rank 46 when it becomes
Nie będzie
legendary.
w Nightmare'ach.
And this
I
is
tak
making
będzie.
them bigger than they could have been previously.
To
So
po
you're
co
going to get more
Nightmare'y
space
będą?
with your glyphs because of this. And when a glyph becomes legendary, it also unlocks a significant bonus, more so than it did before. And you can see that on the bottom of this glyph here. It's got the legendary bonus, increases critical strike damage by 21.6%. And it's very important to note that this is a multiplicative bonus. This 21.6% is not an additive bonus. So you're going to be getting a lot of power from that bonus there.
To co, będziemy pity
Something else I want
walić.
to bring up is that glyphs are moving to the pit. So you're going to be upgrading your glyphs in the
Jeszcze
pit.
bardziej D3.
You're no
No
longer going to
dokładnie.
be upgrading them in nightmare dungeons. And it's going to be an attempt-based system. So when you finish a pit run, you're going to go to the end and you're going to be able to have some chances to level up your glyph.
No nie, szansy będą. No,
and
to samo jak
increase,
Diablo 3.
their
Szansa na
ranks.
ulepszenie glifu będzie.
And if you are in a pit that is
Dokładnie, to są gemy z
10
Diablo 3.
tiers higher than your current glyph, you're going to have
Druga rzecz
guaranteed
z Diablo
success.
3.
And for every 20 pit tiers that that the pit level you're in is higher than your current glyph that you're trying to upgrade, you're going to get bonus ranks so that you can accelerate the process. Do you want to speak more to that, Colin?
Yeah, I think this is a really important note because you could easily look at the rank 100 and be like, oh my god, the grind is even longer. But based on how that upgrade chance works, it's guaranteed as long as you're beating pit tiers that are higher than your glyph. And then how that bonus math ends up playing out is if you're beating, for example, a pit
Chyba jest ta
tier 3,
kontrowersja. Chyba tak. Chyba
that's
Kondys
roughly somewhere
powiedział.
between today's World Tier 3 and 4.
Diablo
You
3
can
w domu.
upgrade a glyph from 1 to 15 in 3 runs. So you think about the difference between today's game and patch 2.0, you're getting those glyphs leveled way faster if you're pushing that difficulty. And what we really wanted to do here was we've heard a ton of feedback around how the XP system for Nightmare Dungeons feels really grindy. It also just doesn't serve the Nightmare Dungeons very well, right? It's like, how do I
jak
get
ty
to
nie
the
chcesz z
end
nami grać,
as
to
fast
my
as
sobie na
possible,
Torment
but
4
nothing in the
zrobimy
dungeon
postacie,
matters, right?
potem ciebie
And that,
weźmiemy
what
i
that
zrobisz
does
sobie 2
is
pity
in the
i
pit, it's all about speed and
wyfarmisz te
efficiency,
glyfy.
and it sort of embraces that. And we think that that's just really going to accelerate your pit glyph upgrading speed. And the chance, you could sort of, I want to be really clear with the chance. The chance-based system is essentially there because it felt really bad when it was binary. Like when we said, hey, you need to beat the pit tier, or you need to beat a pit that's 10 levels higher than your glyph, and if you don't, you get nothing. That just felt really bad. So the chance is not there to increase the grind or slow down progression. It's actually just there to protect from like it feeling just terrible to not get literally anything from that run. So again, to be clear, it's 100% chance as long as you're pushing difficulty. We think that this fits the content a lot better. We've heard a ton of feedback around like the pit rewards feeling lackluster, and there's not really a reason to push difficulty. You know, you sort of just want to hone in on like 90 or 101, depending on where you're at in terms of your progression journey on live. This system really encourages you to push and gives you a tangible reward every single time you do it.
Yeah, and I think it's important that there's the consistency of like the communication between, right? So, hey, my glyphs are currently level 50. Well, what kind of pit tier should I be approaching to upgrade these? Well, somewhere in the range of 50 to 60, right? You're just a little bit higher so that you can keep pushing that harder content.
Yes,
and also, if you have a glyph down at level 1, because maybe you haven't paid attention to that glyph, it's going to level up much faster if you are already proven yourself, proven that you can hang in pit tier 50, for instance. You're going to level those up very quickly.
Zaliczamy te glify jako nie.
I think what's also cool is if you have a build that you feel isn't doing as well as you go up in Torment, it makes it a lot easier to kind of snap something back in and catch up faster.
Czyli czekamy jeszcze na niespodziankę. Chyba nie było jeszcze
Yeah,
to,
the
nie?
further you progress, the easier it is to level those up. So here we have a video basically just showing
cześć,
off
cześć,
what
bo
the
to
new
widok.
UI looks like for upgrading a glyph in patch 2.0. So you can see that it's showing you the
Jezu,
current pit level
sukces.
you're
No glyph,
on,
no.
the current
Diablo
success
3, no.
chance to get a rank up. And something else I want to call out is that when you are, oh yes, right. So this is rank 45 to 46 explicitly, which is the moment where you are increasing a glyph from rare to
Coś mi się
legendary.
zepsuło.
And something important to note about that is that it does cost a fairly significant amount of gem fragments as well, but it's giving you that
Gem
increased radius
fragments?
size and the new multiplicative legendary bonus, which is pretty sick. And here we have an example of showing how the radius gets even bigger in patch 2.0. I want to call out
Jesus.
here that the midpoint says level 21. That is not correct. It is level 15 where the radius increases. But yeah, previously there was only one radius increase. Now with legendary glyphs at rank 46, there is a second
Ale
radius
graficzka tych
increase.
paragonów jakaś jest zmieniona, jakaś taka inna jest. No grafika. No.
Okay, so let's talk about some more stuff related to Paragon. We have realm partitioning for Paragon now, and this is kind of getting into alting that Colin was talking about. We have realm-based Paragon points now. So your Paragon points are going to be shared across an entire realm. And remember that what a realm is like
Na hardcora
either
będzie nam
seasonal
przejdzie.
softcore or seasonal hardcore or the same for eternal. Those are realms. And these Paragon points are going to stay latent
Wszystkie
on a
paragony
pre-level
odblokowuje
60
nam?
character. And what that means
Ty.
is that, you know, if you have, let's say, 150 Paragon points on a realm, those Paragon points will remain inactive on any character that's pre-level 60.
Czekaj, nie.
But once you hit level 60 on that character, they will have those 150 Paragon points.
Nie no,
And it's also important to note that any Paragon points you earn on any of your characters in that realm are going to be shared among all characters in that realm. So if you earn 25 or 50 Paragon points on one character and then hop over to your alt, you're going to have 25 or 50 more Paragon points to spend on that character
Aha,
too.
jeśli jedną postacią wbijesz
And
maksymalny
in
poziom
addition to this
paragonów
change, we
i
have a
drugą
pretty
dojdziesz do
hefty
60
Paragon
levela,
level
to od razu
increase.
wszystkie paragony
So
dostaniesz.
right now the current max besides Renown and Altar of Lilith bonuses is 200. And we're increasing that up to 300, which is
No
going
dla
to give you a
altów dobre, tak
lot
jak
more
piszesz.
levels to chase throughout any given season. Okay, and in light of these changes coming to Paragon, we've made some adjustments to the way that boards work as well. So because we're offering so much more power with legendary glyphs and they mean so much more to your build, you know, we're looking to set a maximum for the number of Paragon boards that you can equip at
Aha,
any given
czyli 5
time.
maksymalnie.
And this is
Okay.
also because, you know, on live right now, the best strategy is to aim for as many glyph slots as possible. You just go off, you oftentimes
Czyli jest
ignore
limit, nie? Bo teraz nie ma
whatever
limitu
legendary node bonus you're
na te
getting
paragonowe
just for the glyph slot.
tablice.
And we want to make sure that you're really focusing on these legendary nodes and that you're focusing on these really cool legendary glyphs that you're getting. And really think about those choices instead of gunning for like every single glyph, for example.
This also
Something I
complements the
really
additional. I was just going to say this really helps complement the additional 100 more levels. Like we've heard a lot of feedback that it feels really flat once you hit 100, that there's just no more progression. You don't really need to kill any of the monsters anymore unless it's explicitly to
Bo to wszystko,
get
co sobie teraz o nim
the
mówią,
drop
to
off of
będzie
them.
w podstawce. Nie?
And that
Nic,
kind of
nic
feels bad,
tutaj
right?
nie
Like
ma
I'm walking through this
o
dungeon
dodatku.
and like I get literally nothing out of killing these monsters. So
Ciekawe, czy będzie
with
jeszcze
the
jeden
board limit,
Campfire chat
we've
związany
packed a
tylko z
ton of
dodatkiem.
power
Bo
with
jeśli nie
additional
będzie, no
Paragon
to
levels to grind, a
słabo
ton of
trochę,
power
nie?
with
Że
legendary
dodatek nie
glyphs,
przyniesie nic
but it
jeszcze
also
takiego
creates a
nowego.
situation where once
Smutna żaba to.
you've achieved all those different things, you don't feel so bad necessarily around not getting to that Paragon level 300. At a certain point, you start to really just sort of really need to hone in on your build, and those extra Paragon points are going to start providing you more of a show of sort of how badass you are, and give you incremental progress that's a little bit less sort of demanding that you must grind through all of this content to unlock every part of your Paragon board.
Yeah, and something I'm pretty excited about this is that, you know, sometimes on live it can feel like my goal is to get a new Paragon board, and as soon as I achieve that, my goal is to get a new Paragon board and get off the one I just unlocked. And I think this change really lets me kind of explore the boards and think about what specific route optimizations I want to take, and it lets me personalize it a little more, which I'm a pretty big fan of.
Well, I know we have we just went through a ton of content right here with all the changes that are coming for progression to Paragon to itemization. I know it was a lot for people here. We will actually have a blog immediately up after the stream that will kind of also explain a little bit more of this to players so that they can actually get a understanding in their own cadence of like what is going to be changing with patch 2.0 for Diablo 4 in regards to some of the progression items. I know, Colin, we're seeing a lot in chat of like, people are noting like, hey, this feels a little D3-ish in ways. I don't know if you wanted to chat or like comment on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's definitely familiar, right? So we thought a lot about like what is the right way to address the player feedback of we've gotten a bunch of feedback around like World Tier 5.
Zaraz wracam, idę zajarać, żeby tutaj nie
right? I want to be able to level up the challenge in the game. I want to be able to get more efficiency. And we wanted to do it in a way that was leaning into what we saw you all were really resonating with, which is getting to the end game faster. And we felt like, okay, well, we could add a World Tier 5 and add ancestral, uber ancestral, and increase the level cap. But that would mean you would just need to grind more to get to that point where you're finding your forever items, doing item modification. And we could add a world tier 6, uber ancestral, right? And it just sort of made us reevaluate what is important. And it's what's important to us is getting people into the end game, getting people finding their forever items, smashing monsters, getting more powerful sort of item modification and efficiency. So that was part of it. And then the other part of it, I'd say, is I think Diablo 4, more than any Diablo, has had a ton of item customization and power along the leveling journey, which really makes the leveling progression feel different, right? Like if you're tempering, if you're imbuing aspects, if you're really min-maxing your reward scheme, you can really push difficulty tiers early. If you played D3, hard is really the only real difficulty, right? But because we have so many different ways to grow your power, we think that represents a pretty fun challenge of like, how do I take all these pieces and really push as early as I can to get to that max level faster? And one more thing that's really important to note is the jumps between torments are pretty enormous. We don't expect you to sort of play it like today's D3, where you essentially log in, get your Hadrig set, and hop right into Torment 16. The jumps are actually pretty enormous between Torment 1 and 2, and it creates this really fun like progression through those Torment tiers, and it feels like a meaningful step forward when you get into Torment 2 and then a Torment 3. We're hoping this doesn't necessarily feel like a 2-hour sort of journey through the Torment tiers, and then now you're in Torment 4, and that's how you play the rest of the game.
2-hour journey.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and also one thing I'll add is, shouts to Twitch chat, everything that you say, hey, you like what we're doing, big dub. We appreciate it. Much love for the response. Also, all the people in Twitch chat who are like, I don't like this.
Babaś trochę mało pisał na temat PoE.
Much appreciation the same. We're looking at what you're saying.
And NDA miał chyba za dużo.
And we're going to try to incorporate it and make the game better. And I think it's interesting, I'm seeing the sort of Diablo 3 references, and it's like, from our perspective, if something really worked well in Diablo 3, that's more important to us to like do the thing that the players felt like was working for them than anything else, right? The fact that we've done it before in any form, to me, wouldn't stop us from doing the right thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
just doing it the right way. Yeah, I just said doing it the right way for D4. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
This is the difficulty of doing everything remote. It feels like it's like a Zoom call, but interrupting each other. And also, big shout out to Twitch chat for calling out Jeevan's. I've seen that message a few times already. But so thanks, Aislinn. Thank you, Colin. I know Colin's going to be joining us more on a couple other topics, but we still have a lot to talk about in this stream. And the next thing that we do want to talk about is class changes and everything. And so Charles will be taking us through all the class changes for patch 2.0.
Yeah, awesome. So before we get into some of the slides and details, I just wanted to thank Colin and Aislinn for talking about all the systemic updates that are coming, how we're going to test your character and how you're going to progress through it. But my topic's going to be a bit more about how, like, what are the exact abilities and skills and new legendary effects and uniques that you're gonna get to take on these awesome challenges that are set up through the difficulty tier system. And also a slight disclaimer, PTR is a very early build for whatever is going to go live on patch 2.0, and some of the assets that we've captured here are also still early on, and so some of the exact numbers or some of the wording may slightly be changed, so definitely refer to the patch notes, which we're going to be publishing right after the stream, for the exact details and kind of final, in air quotes, numbers that are going to go on the PTR, and of course it still may be subject to change before we actually launch patch 2.0 live. All right, so with that out of the way, let's start talking about some of the tempering changes that are going to come in patch 2.0. So tempering is a system that we introduced back in Season of Loot Reborn, Season 4, that gave you a way to really customize your items and kind of make your build your own. And we've received a lot of feedback on the tempering system, and we're really committed to iterating on and making sure that this system is the best it can possibly be going forward. One of the key points of feedback that we heard was around weapon tempers. So these affixes that you get to attach to your weapons, right? Your weapons are a big, important part of your build and your character. And there was a big disparity here, where some affixes that were on weapon tempering were multiplicatively increasing your player power, right? Things like double projectiles or things of that nature, or bash cleaving, which was a multiplicative bonus. And others, not so much, right? You had some other ones that were more duration or size effect. And they just were hard to compare against each other. And so going forward in patch 2.0, we've made all weapon tempering affixes multiplicative damage increases, oftentimes to very specific skills. And to accommodate this, we already had one bonus projectiles, and now we're going to have new affixes that give skills chance to deal double damage, which means if triggers the chance to deal double damage, the entire skill is just going to do twice as much damage as before. Every hit of it will deal double damage. It's kind of an all or nothing kind of deal. And then the chance to hit twice is the chance for any time it deals damage, you just get an extra hit of damage. And this allows you to trigger things like lucky hit procs or anything that counts the number of times you deal damage. That's going to trigger an extra time with the hit twice. Offensive tempering affixes, these are the ones that can also go on your weapons, but can go on other spots as well. These are going to be additive damage increases.
Czemu nie zrobią zamiast double damage, po prostu zmienią ten skill, żeby robił ten double damage jakoś inaczej, a nie, że tylko double damage.
And whereas the weapon tempers are often talking to more specific skills.
Jak na przykład
so here we can see
magma,
the Shadow Augments
kulognia, tak? Ona się rozdziela na kilka kulognia
i tak dalej. But now we've got new ones that are chance for reap to hit twice.
Nie, że po prostu double damage.
And every target you hit, there's just a chance to get 2 hits on that target instead of 1. And Corpse Explosion, whenever you cast Corpse Explosion, there is a chance for the entire skill to deal double damage to every
Dobra, dla bota będzie, dla necro będzie double damage.
Additionally, we've moved those size and duration affixes, which we think are really cool and really interesting ways of modifying your skills. We've moved those over to the utility category. So they're not directly competing with these multiplicative damage increases. You're not going to feel bad that, oh, I'm missing out on damage just to make my area hit a little bit larger or to have a longer duration.
Nie każdy aspekt jest taki zmieniający. W sumie Mag ma najwięcej takich aspektów, które zmieniają mu ten skill.
Which are still really cool ways to customize your character. We just don't want them to compete with damage. And finally, we know that oftentimes tempering leads itself to, hey, I see this list of 5 or even 6 affixes sometimes. We really are going to try to be limiting tempering recipes to at most 4 affixes that could possibly roll on them, just to give you a little bit better odds of actually hitting the one that you care about than the one that you want, and just be a little bit easier to kind of comprehend. And even so, we're trying to set this limit at 4, but oftentimes we're aiming for just 3 on the recipe, depending on how the grouping them together in ways that make sense. So this is an active area that we're working on, really trying to make sure that it's not quite, it's easier for you to get the right affix out of the tempering recipe by limiting that the number that are on there. All right, next up we've got changes to ultimate skills. So ultimate skills can now gain skill ranks. This is probably pretty self-explanatory, but just like every other skill in the game, ultimate skills can now be ranked up to rank 5 in the skill tree. And just like every other skill, increasing the skill rank will increase the damage output of your ultimate skills, but it's also going to give you cooldown reduction on these ultimate skills as well. So oftentimes other skills, you just kind of get one or the other, right? Sometimes it's a cooldown reduction, sometimes it's a damage or healing increase.
Dobra, nic to nie zmienia,
On
te
ultimate skills, you're
dodatkowe
gonna
10
get
punktów.
kind of the best of both worlds.
A nie
It's going to
mówili
be
nic co z
increasing
najpierw
the damage
dungeonami,
output
pewnie
and
będzie
reducing
osobny temat o tym.
And finally, effects that do grant bonus skill ranks on this, such as, Harlequin's Crest, the Shaco, that gives plus to all skill ranks. These are only going to apply to ultimate skills that you've already learned in the skill tree. And this is to make sure that you still can only equip one ultimate skill. You can't like get plus ranks to all skills and then suddenly have access to 4 ultimate skills. We still don't want that. We still want you to just pick one. But you're just going to be getting,
A jak tam w
you're
ogóle
going to be able
obsazakcja
to
jest
really
na
juice
streamie?
that ultimate
Nawet
skill up.
mnie
If
nie
you
było.
really want to make, lacerate be really strong,
My sami
that's
w
going to
sumie.
be a powerful effect that you can invest more skill points
No
in.
musi być rework, musi być.
All right, so those are some of the general updates. Let's now talk about
classic.
the new content coming for each individual class, starting here with our Barbarian. All right, so sometimes you're playing as a Barbarian and you experience a problem, right? You are standing here and there is an enemy over there. What to do? Well, a good Barbarian is going to throw their weapon at the enemy over there to kill them at a distance.
Nowy skill,
Right,
tak?
so now we've got a new skill called Mighty Throw. It's going to hurl your weapon at an enemy. It's going to deal damage on impact, and then it's going to stick in the ground and do some pulses of damage over
Nie było
time.
nigdy takiego
So
skilla
even if the initial
oczywiście.
impact doesn't kill them, there's going to be some extra pulses there. Additionally, we've got some upgrades for it, just like our other skills. Enhanced Mighty Throw is going to increase your attack speed while the weapon is out. And then you can either opt in a Fighter's Mighty Throw, which is going to give bonuses to that pulsing damage. It causes your weapon swaps to pulse for more and give you a bit of barrier. Or you're going to opt into Warrior's Mighty Throw, which is going to dramatically increase the initial impact damage, and it's going to stun enemies on impact. Let's take a video clip of this in action.
Barb będzie dobry.
All right, so we've got Barb, just simple example here with a few enemies, throws out this, ephemeral version of the weapon, lands, deals a big chunk of damage, and then pulses over time before returning back to you.
I was a huge fan of double throw in Diablo 2, so this is really exciting.
Yeah, it looks sweet too. It's kind of like bluish yellow,
Ciekawe,
like
rzucasz,
ancient kind of
rzucasz ten
color scheme to it.
broń.
The effects looks awesome on it.
So ranged barb is definitely happening in patch 2.0.
I nie możesz rzucić
For
drugi
sure.
raz.
If you want to spec really heavily into this,
Właśnie
yeah,
rzucisz
you're
tą
going to
broń,
be throwing weapons out
za
like
pierwszym
crazy.
razem zabije wszystkie mobki
All right, so we've also got some
a
new
ty już pobiegłeś do
key
następnej grupy
passives
mobków i
and
co
new
dalej?
legendary paragon nodes for every class here. So for Barbarian, we've got Barbed Carapace. This is a key passive. So it's going to increase your thorns based on how much fury you're spending. And whenever you cast a skill with a cooldown, it's going to grant you unhindered for a duration, which allows you to move through enemies. And then enemies that are close to you are going to take are going to take damage from your thorns every second. You're going to kind of pulse damage of your thorns every second. Now this is really cool. It really enables Thorns Barb, which we had a little bit of support for, but one of the big problems of Thorns is that you really wanted enemies to hit you and hit you quickly. And this gives you another alternative to deal bonus damage or to really pay off for building up all that thorns with this new key passive. Additionally, we've got a legendary paragon node, the Force of Nature. Your earthquakes have a chance to spawn dust devils, and your earthquake damage is going to be increased by your damage against close enemies. So this is really plays into these earthquakes and dust devil effects, which we kind of call sub powers internally. These effects that are not skills that you cast directly, but some of your legendary effects will spawn these earthquakes and dust devils. This is just a new way to really power those up and blend them together in the same build. Additionally, we're adding some new passives to the skill tree, and this has really helped to give you a way, along with ultimate skill ranks, to spend a lot of those new points that you're getting by leveling up from 50 to 60. Those new skill points you're getting, we're giving you some new ways to invest those. All right, we also got some new items, of course. We've got the Ugly Bastard Helm, a new unique helm for Barbarians. And it makes you so ugly that whenever you are berserking, all of your damage is converted into fire damage. And so that's really interesting. Barb always had this little bit of like a light fire theme. You had a few different effects that dealt fire damage. And now if you really want to play a fire barb, this is the unique helm for you. Also playing into that, we've got Aspect of Flaming Rampage, which causes your charge to deal some fire damage, and Aspect of Shattering Steel, which will cause your Steel Grasp and Iron Maelstrom to do some bonus physical damage. All right, moving on to the Druid. The Druid gets a new skill, a new core skill, in fact, called Stone Burst. And this is a core skill that's channeled.
Ej, ale
It kind
ten
of has a
skill,
very
te
unique
skille
kind of
wszystkie
input
nowe,
mechanism compared to
one
pretty
są
much
w
any other skill
podstawowej
in
wersji.
Diablo
To nie,
4.
że to dodatek
And
kupisz i
as
będziesz
you're
miał skille
channeling it, you
dodatkowe.
target an area, and as you channel it, the affected area grows in size over about 1 second of channeling. And at any point, you can release the channel, and it's going to deal a big burst of damage to whatever size you kind of landed
No ale
on
to jest
there.
channeling skill, to tak nie wiem, czy stanie w miejscu.
You
to jest
could
takie...
tap it really quickly and just do 1 pulse of damage to a small area, or you can channel up for a little bit longer and hit a much wider area, depending on the exact combat scenario you find yourself in, or how the enemies are distributed on the battlefield here. Of course, we've got our upgrades that increase damage to the enemies hit in the initial radius. So, really doubling down on that single target capability of a core skill.
Mamy bingo.
And Primal Stone Burst gives you some attack speed, and Raging Stone Burst
Większe
will dramatically
drzewko
increase
skilli.
the spirit cost, but also give it a ton more damage. So if you have a ton of spirit generation, then that might be the upgrade you look for in Stone Burst. Let's see a video of this in action.
To już 2.
All right, so you see it ticks up. There's like 3 different levels, like small, medium, and large. In this one, the druid kind of held it for a while, but you could release it at any time. And so here you see just kind of rapid firing a lot of quick, small shots, just because they knew that would be enough to clear out the enemies here. And also while you're channeling, it does some pulses of damage to enemies in that area as well.
The channel explosion is so satisfying to blow up just so many monsters.
Yeah, it gets huge,
really feels
and
amazing.
it looks so sweet too. I really hats off to the
kto ma czas,
VFX artists
stanie w
who
miejscu.
worked on making these look so beautiful. The new skills here. All right, so of course, Druid also has new passives, a new key passive called One with Nature that really empowers companion builds. We've heard a lot that players love playing with companions. They're wolves, they're poison creepers, they're ravens, and this is going to be the key passive for you. So all of your companion skills gain an additional companion, and they deal increased damage. And there's also a little bonus, basically, with you gain the passive effect of all of the companion skills. Now, if you're taking this key passive, you're probably taking these companions anyway, but just in case, your build is such that, well, I just want to take, 2 out of the 3, right? I can put wolves and poison creeper on my bar, but, maybe you don't have enough skill slots to put in ravens. You're still going to be able to get the passive effect of that when you take this key passive, because we just want you to have tons of these companions, really leading the charge here. We've also got Untamed, a new legendary Paragon node that plays right into this One with Nature key passive.
Ciągle czekam na te quality of life. Teraz druid jeszcze 3 klasy tylko.
Companion active skill will grant you bonus ranks to all of your companion skills for a time.
Jest ciekawe, co mag dostanie.
Damage of those.
Pasywki jakieś.
Just like before, we've got some new passives coming into the skill tree as well. I think some of these might have some temporary icons on them. So, like I said, these were from an early build. Some of the icons were very specific. Art might be adjusted, so, bear with us. This is the nature of PTR and
Druidem w sumie nie grałem za dużo.
All right, moving on to some of the items. Oh no, we've got a video. Oh right, a video of really leading a wolf pack here, right? So this includes wolves with the Storm's Companion to turn them into lightning werewolves. And I'm sure there's some other ones here, like aspect of the Stampede is probably involved. You just have, what is that, 7 wolves following you around? You really get to lead the wolf pack with this.
This is the best video in our presentation. Well, actually, no, sorry. This is the second best video in our presentation. You guys will see the best video in our presentation, but yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. For all you werewolf
te
lovers
wilki
out
za
there,
tobą biegną, a nie wybiegają ci naprzeciw.
I'm really looking forward to playing with this.
Że ty idziesz, a oni ci sprzątają mopki
All right, so new items.
spod nóg,
So they've got the Stone of Vehemin. This is a unique totem that's going to empower your Stone Burst, the new core skill. So channeling it is going to grant you some damage reduction, and the final explosion will deal increased damage based on how long you were channeling it. So this just really encourages you to build it up to that max size and let off a huge explosion.
Ale zobaczcie, te rangi są, nie? Do 21. A teraz rangi są do 16, nie? To jest chyba ta zmiana tych ancestralów. Czyli jest 5 rang chyba na ancestralach, można tak chyba założyć. Mogę ten czat jakoś zmienić, bo nic nie widać? Nie, mogę go na przykład w inne miejsce. W inne miejsce go na przykład, albo go trochę zmniejszyć.
Which causes Stone Burst to deal increased damage, and if you cast it at or above 100 spirit here, it's going to immediately be at that maximum size. So you don't necessarily need to channel it
Gdybym
as
tego
long as
czatu
you are
nie
casting when you have
wsadził,
a
to
lot of
będzie
spirit.
przeszkadzał.
This synergizes really well with the Earth and
Chyba, że
Light
go
key
troszkę
passive, which gives you
troszkę
full spirit
przytnę
when
i
it triggers.
wsadzimy
So
wam
you
tylko
can
trzy
trigger Earth and Light and
wiadomości.
then
W sumie i
immediately
tak
get
za
a
dużo
huge
osób nie
stone
pisze
burst.
naraz.
We've got Aspect of Shattered Defenses, which alters Stone Burst in a rather interesting way. It causes Stone Burst causes enemies to take increased damage from your other skills for a time and reduces Stone Burst spirit cost. This kind of converts Stone Burst away from necessarily being your primary damage source to being a bit more of a setup skill. Right? You can kind of debuff enemies, and then you can find some interesting builds where you have other ways of spending your spirit, maybe another core skill or boulder or some other primary damage source, and then you can use Stone Burst to kind of set up that build. Really interesting to see how players, what kind of builds you make with Shattered Defenses. Additionally, we've got Aspect of the Rabid Bear, which empowers your Grizzly Rage to apply rabies and increases your poison output. Storm Crow, which is just lightning ravens. Your ravens are now lightning. It looks awesome. And Aspect of the Agile Wolf, which gives Shred a 4th attack. Shred normally is like a 3-part combo, and now it's a 4-part combo that deals even more damage on that 4th hit, and it's going to knock down enemies as well.
Nic nie zasłania teraz.
All right, so that is Druid. Really looking forward to playing some Druid in 2.0. But let's move on to the Necromancer, because we've got a lot to get through. We've got Soul Rift. This is a new Darkness ultimate skill. So Necromancers kind of had 3 ultimates already. They had one that was blood, one that was bone, and one that was related to summoning. And now we've kind of completed it, and we've added a darkness or shadow damage ultimate. Soul Rift creates an area around your character, kind of follows with you, that just constantly deals damage over time. And it's going to be sucking out the souls of enemies who you're hitting. And every time it sucks out a soul from an enemy, you're going to gain some essence, and you're going to gain a barrier. So you can stack up this barrier. It helps you be survivable, and it deals, really good damage over time. Supreme Soul Rift gives you bonus damage for every soul that you absorb, and Prime Soul Rift causes the soul absorption to also apply vulnerable. Let's take a video of this in action here.
Okay.
Right, so enemies all coming up.
Super useful, Charles, right? Now that you have another way to give yourself defenses. Necro has historically had some trouble with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important part here. And when we get to
ten ult działa jak takie za tobą chodzi w sensie.
We're adding a bit more barrier into the
Necromancer. Dałoby się go sprowadzić do
Blood Necromancers always had a really easy time surviving. They had a lot of fortify and a lot of max health. And really, the other ones like the Bone and Shadow Necro didn't have quite as much survivability, and so now we're introducing more barrier in more places to ensure that kind of non-blood Necromancer builds, the Shadow and the Bone.
No, że miał problemy, ze survivability.
Have a bit more survivability and are able to scale into that late game pretty well.
Aż tak było.
All right, so as I mentioned, the new passive. So they have a new key passive called Affliction. That there's this new concept of Affliction where applying vulnerable, crowd control, or shadow damage over time effects to enemies will apply them with Affliction, which is going to make them take increased damage from you and your minions. Additionally, when you apply a curse skill to someone or to an enemy who has this Affliction, you're going to do a big chunk of shadow damage. So this kind of turns your curse skills, your Decrepify and Iron Maiden, into offensive skills. You can curse an area and then they take a big chunk of damage as well.
Ale znowu się robi jakiś tutaj damage w piątki,
that you've dealt, or the bonus affixes that you have for that crowd control, vulnerable, and shadow damage. And along that same theme, the new legendary Paragon node Frailty is going to cause cursed enemies to take more damage from you, and so it plays very nicely with the Affliction key passive. And once again, more skill tree passives to spend those extra points on. And I want to highlight Necrotic Fortitude here in the upper right that gives you it's just a generic passive that gives you a chance, a lucky hit chance to gain a barrier. And so that's going to be really good for anybody who wants just a bit more bump of survivability and to play into the more barrier focused on Necromancer.
Yeah, going back to Affliction really quick, I love the idea of using my curses offensively, like as a damage skill. I think that's going to be such a blast.
Yeah, it's really cool to just yeah, definitely gonna be blasting with them. I think it's really thematic too. I love playing with it.
It pairs really well with the utility changes. Now that we have way more size increases in utility, it gives you so many more utility options. Those curses get pretty huge, and it feels great.
Yeah, for all of us who just want to win by debuff spamming, I love that one.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about some of the new items coming for Necromancer here. So we've got a new unique item, the
fajnie wygląda
Unmaker,
to, no.
a unique helm. This is going to empower the Soul Rift, the new ultimate skill. Of course, you gain some skill ranks to Soul Rift, because now ultimate skills have skill ranks. And every 30 essence that you spend while Soul Rift is active will increase its duration up to 8 seconds. So as long as you're active and kind of spending the essence with the Unmaker, you're going to have a very long duration of Soul Rift. And then for every essence that you gain while it's active, which absorbing the souls does trigger essence gain, you're going to do a pulse of damage around you, some bonus damage. And so it really encourages you to just keep Soul Rift up all the time, be constantly gaining and
Blast
spending
from
the
the
essence,
past.
and it's going to be really, really fun to make that build work. Additionally, we've got Reaping Lotus aspect. This empowers your Sever, your core skill. Sever will no longer return to you. Previously, Sever was kind of an out and back situation. Now it just goes out, and then it splits into 3 specters at the end, deals some extra bonus damage, and then that's the end of the Sever. So it really does empower it on the swing out, and looks really cool. We got aspect of Fell Gluttony that empowers your Golem. Whenever you cast your Golem's active, deals a big pulse of damage around it. And your Golem will then consume corpses to reduce its cooldown. So anybody who really wants to build around making your Golem as strong as possible, this is going to be the aspect for you. And finally, we've got Phasing Poltergeists aspect, which causes your Bone Spirit to split into 3 spirits that deal a percentage of the damage as well. I think we got a video clip of this one because it looks really sweet. So you cast Bone Spirit at 1 target, and then it spawns 3 little mini Bone Spirits to seek out nearby enemies as well. So it kind of gives you increased area of effect, and if there's just 1 target, of course, it'll reconverge back on that same target as well, but also just adds a bit more AoE capability for your Bone Spirit build. Very cool. All right, so Rogue. Rogue gets Dance of Knives. This is a new channeled skill for Rogue. It's an agility cutthroat skill. And it also has a pretty interesting mechanic where it has some charges that will recharge, and how long you can channel it is based on how many charges you have. It's going to take 1 charge per second to channel, but there's no energy cost or just like a normal cooldown. Here you can just channel it as long as you have charges. And while you're channeling it, you're going to be spinning around, you're going to be throwing knives at enemies nearby, and you're going to gain some movement speed and dodge chance. Really is kind of like a spin to win kind of build on Rogue here.
To jest channel, ale jak na zasadzie
you got Enhanced Dance of Knives, which gives you some charge refund as you're moving with it. That's what we really want to encourage, is this constant motion, this forward momentum. And Methodical Dance of Knives drops some stun grenades.
Channel jest spoko i właśnie możesz się poruszać.
Disciplined Dance of Knives will slow enemies and has a chance to pierce through the enemies that you're throwing the daggers at. Let's take a look at this in action.
No właśnie, pokaż.
So here we got the Rogue just going spinning, throwing some daggers around at everyone, and yeah,
this is awesome. Speed farming. This is like the best speed farming skill.
And that animation is just amazing.
Absolutely. And you can see there at the end, they had the upgrade that drops a bunch of stun grenades at the end. Obviously, enemies were all dead, but if you use this to get into a big cluster of enemies, then you stop the channel, you drop some stun grenades, reset some of your charges, and you're good to start spinning again.
Ale w ogóle tnie tam ręce leżą.
Yeah, those are perfect for like running to an elite pack after slaughtering a bunch of normals, and it just annihilates the elites. It feels amazing.
Yeah. All right, so we've got new passives as well.
Strafe z Demon Huntera.
Chemical Admixture. And this is empowering your non-physical damage. So rogues can do poison, shadow, and cold through their various imbuements. And when you deal 3 different types of that non-physical damage, the potency of your imbuement skills is going to be dramatically increased for a time. And the more bonus damage that you build on your gear for bonus poison, shadow, or cold damage, the further that potency gets increased. Really encouraging you to mix and match the different elements. It's really thematic with the alchemical kind of theme, and really supporting a build of rogue that we've kind of had in the game, but really wanted to give it robust support of a key passive for. And also we've got a legendary Paragon node, the Dance Macabre, which encourages this kind of 1-2 combo of casting a mobility or subterfuge skill, increases the damage
będzie
of your
OP,
next
nie?
skill, whatever it might be,
50%.
by quite a substantial amount. So you can, cast your dash and then, position yourself, cast a big rain of arrows, and it hits very hard. Very cool, and actually impacts your moment-to-moment rotation as well. And of course, we've got the new skill tree passives as well. All right, new items. We've got the Pit Fighter's Gall. This is the ancestral unique ring. Or sorry, just it's a unique ring. It's not necessarily, you can find it before ancestral tier. And this Pit Fighter's Gall will empower your smoke grenade. So your smoke grenade skill will increase your critical strike damage and then leave a cloud of shadows behind. And while you're within that cloud of shadows, you're going to be constantly regaining stealth. And so there's a lot of interesting ways you can play off of triggering going into or out of stealth. And Pit Fighter's Gall is just going to really enable that when you cast Smoke Grenade. We've got Aspect of Star Shards. This is a new legendary to directly support Dance of Knives. And the daggers from Dance of Knives have a chance to shatter, creating more shards of metal that deal bonus damage. And you can now use combo points on Dance of Knives to further increase the channel duration if you've opted into the combo points specialization.
Nic mi to nie mówi.
Aspect of Poisonous Clouds plays well with Pit Fighter's Gall. When you gain stealth, you create a cloud of
Rogalem
poison
grałem jeszcze mniej
damage.
niż druidem chyba.
And Aspect of Splintering Shards, there's just a chance whenever you're hitting a frozen enemy to create some ice spikes. So if you're freezing enemies because you're playing Alchemical Admixture and using Cold Imbue, Splintering Shards might be a good aspect for you as well. All right, moving on to the Sorceress. The Sorceress gets a new Conjuration skill called the Familiar. This is a Conjuration skill that is all 3 elements. It is a Shock skill, a Pyromancy skill, and a Frost skill. So there's 3 charges of it, so you can cast it
Familiar,
back to
czy
back.
też skill z Diablo 3.
You summon a Familiar of the element of your last skill cast. So if you just cast a Pyromancy skill, you're going to summon a Fire Familiar. If you just cast a Lightning skill, you'll summon a Lightning Familiar, and same with a Cold, you'll summon a Cold Familiar. And with the enhanced effect, these familiars will do a bonus effect. So the Fire Familiar will constantly apply some burning to enemies that it's around, the Cold Familiar will chill, and Lightning Familiar will stun. And of course, their damage type is going to be based on what type they are, so that it'll benefit from all of your bonus fire damage.
And that aura, Charles, is really great, right, to tap into some of the passives on the Sorcerer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if there's a lot of passives that say, hey, you get bonuses against burning enemies, for instance. Now, if you have the Fire Familiar, that's going to really easily be able to apply that constantly, and you're going to have pretty high uptime on having Familiars out because of the way the charge and duration works. Let's take a look at this in action.
No, pokaż action.
All right, so initially we cast a Frost Familiar here, right? It's jumping around and it's landing, it's dealing frost damage. Then we cast a Fire skill. Now we get a Fire Familiar jumping around and kind of dive bombing on enemies. And then finally we get a Shock Familiar, a Lightning Familiar here that's going to deal lightning damage. So you can kind of mix and match these depending on what skills you use, what combination you cast them in. And it's really flexible. It fits into a lot of different builds. Even if you're just a pure, say, Fire Sword, and you just want to do fire damage, you just want to do burning, this could still fit because you're just going to be able to summon the Fire Familiar. But it really
Ale jakby ich tak dużo naspamić, żeby się pojawiały co chwilę. Spamiłyby cały ekran, nie? Takie boom, bombardowanie z każdej strony.
For the Sega demonstration, I think we only have a couple of them out on screen, but I think you can have up to 6, right?
No, Jarhead tylko 6
you can have
można,
up to 6, and that would make a lot more sense once we get to talk about some of the unique items that are coming with this patch.
Czyli unikat pewnie coś zrobi, że...
But first, let's talk about the new passives, and we've got Enlightenment. This really also plays into the concept of mixing and matching the elements. You see it's got all 3 kind of colors on there. Casting a skill grants a stack of Enlightenment, or 3 stacks if your skill was a different element to the one before, so you're alternating here. And whenever you gain max stacks, you're going to become enlightened, and you get a ton of bonuses for being in this enlightened state. But then it drops off.
20% attack speeda, damage,
it's really a reward for
mana.
mixing and matching those elements, more so than any other key passive we've had on Sorc before. And similarly with the legendary Paragon node Fundamental Release, each fire, lightning, and cold attack you make against an enemy increases the damage they take from all sources by 10%. So you really need to hit them with all 3 types to gain the maximum bonus here. All right, on to the unique items. So
co to za...
Side Bindings. This is a unique gloves, and this plays right into the familiar. So whenever you cast familiar with this unique on, you're going to summon all 3 elemental variants at once. However, it does come with a bit of restrictions on it. So familiar's duration is going to be dramatically increased and its cooldown reduced, but you're going to have 1 less charge of it. So you won't be able to spam this quite as much, but you press the button once or twice and then you get the max for familiars out. They're all over the screen and they're going to last for quite a long time. With this unique glove. So it's going to be really, really powerful too. If you're all about this conjuration build, all about amping up the power of the familiar, it's an awesome unique for that.
O, motyw sezonowy, no ciekawe.
Additionally, we've got new legendaries for the aspect of overheating. After channeling Incinerate for a time, you're going to deal bonus damage to the target. And,
no nie, ma takie rozwleczone to trochę, powiem ci, już te klasy już takie trochę tak męczą się, czy już znowu mam tę fazę, że na wykładzie siedzę. Prawie się trochę zamknąłem i taki pogadają, nie?
Next 3 cast of charge bolts will no longer send out bolts. They're going to send out big waves of lightning that deal even more damage, and it's always going to be a crit. And then aspect of elemental constellation, once again, more about the mixing and matching of all 3 elements. Casting one of the elemental skills will summon a matching type elemental dagger to pierce through enemies. And the damage of that dagger is going to be increased if you get all 3 of the different element types in that time frame. All right, so I think we've got new mythic uniques. Of course, how could I forget? New mythic unique items. These are the strongest items in the game. We've got Shroud of False Death. And I think the really cool part about this is it's just inherent affects. It's going to grant +1 skill rank to all passives. And this is really awesome.
Ten drugi God Slayer
skill tree. This is just a ton
ma taki sam hełm jak God Slayer.
This new unique chest. And its effect is, if you haven't attacked in the last 2 seconds, you're going to gain stealth and bonus movement speed. Now, stealth historically has just been a mechanic that has been on rogues and a little bit on druids with the werewolf builds. But now every class, if you get this mythic unique, is going to have some access to stealth. You can drop out of combat for a little bit, and then you get into stealth, and you get tons of movement speed to maybe move on to the next pack or move somewhere else in the dungeon.
And it's a really simple line, all passives, but it's literally all passives, which is insane. Like it's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. And we've also got the Heir of Perdition, a mythic unique helm.
That's the movement speed.
And this one has an interesting effect. So it says, give into hatred and earn Lilith's favor, increasing your damage dealt by 60%.
So just Angels and Demons?
A huge damage bonus.
A jakie my anioły walimy?
The second line here says, slaughtering enemies to briefly steal Lilith's favor from... or slaughter enemies to briefly steal Lilith's favor from nearby allies. So this means if you're playing in a group
walimy jakieś demony? Anioły, przepraszam, w Diablo? Chyba nie kojarzę, żeby anioły były. Może w dodatku dojdą
will only
dopiero.
favor one of you, and you
no.
actually gain double the bonus of this, right? If you steal someone else's favor, you get 120% bonus damage, and they would get 0. But if you're just playing this solo, no one else has their Perdition around, it's just a flat 60% bonus damage, which is still a ton and very impactful for a mythic unique. All right, I believe that is actually everything. Wow, that is so much new class content, new skills, new legendaries, new everything. I didn't even get to talk about some of our other, more regular class balance changes, updates to existing skills and legendaries. So make sure you definitely check out the patch notes. There is still more changes to come, but we're already really deep into this Campfire chat, and we didn't want to extend it too much longer. So make sure you check out the patch notes for all the details on those other changes coming as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charles. I know we have gone through a lot of information. We're in hour 1.5 of this Campfire chat. As I said, and I mentioned on social, like this is going to be a very beefy Campfire chat. We still have 2 more things that we do want to really cover off. And as Charles had mentioned, there are a lot of other class changes that we didn't actually fit within the presentation, like a lot of balance-specific items. So that will be on patch notes, and patch notes will be available on our blog for PTR.
On-off content było. Było to on-off content? Czy to bingo mamy?
We are going to jump into some quality of life items.
A nie, coming soon było.
Colin, do you want to take us through some quick quality of life items?
Dobra, quality of life, dawaj.
Yeah, I'll go quick so we can get to
Dla mnie
the super
najważniejsza rzecz.
exciting, cool thing.
Okej.
Yeah, so the first one here is you can
Preferred
now
town
select
portal
your
to było.
preferred town portal location. So how that's going to work is you're going to open up the map and hover over any of the waypoints, and when you right-click on it, it's going to set that as essentially your preferred location, and whenever
jest
you town
zajebiste.
portal, it's going to take you there. So this is really helpful
10
for
na
when you're
10
doing
zmiana.
whispers, for example. You just set
The
the
best.
tree of
Najlepsza
whispers as your
zmiana.
preferred location, do some whispers. When you press T, you go right there. You don't have to open up the map, then click on the waypoint, then click on accept. Like it's all very seamless, and it's just removing a lot of the inputs that you have
Technologia,
to
w
do to
końcu
get
mamy
back to town
technologię,
quickly.
żeby to zrobić.
The next thing here is we're adding a dungeon key inventory tab for things like nightmare sigils. So that just gives you more space for more activities, so much room for activities. The next one here is we've done a pretty substantial rework of Monster CC, and this is in the spirit of we want to have really clear sort of delineations between normal monsters and elite monsters, and we didn't like how often you were getting slowed down and how mandatory unstoppable could feel.
Ciekawe, ile tam miejsca
I always felt bad to be fighting this huge horde of enemies, and you see this elite, and you're paying attention to the elite, and then like this goat man mauler comes up and like sneak attacks you and knocks you down for 3 seconds, and that's the thing that kills you. That always felt like bullshit, right? So what we've done is we've sort of overhauled a lot of the normal monster CCs to be quick and snappy. Like you still feel them, you kind of want to avoid them still, but they're much less sort of the reason why you die entirely. So the vampire impale, when like the two-hander like comes and stabs you and stuns you for 3 seconds, that's turned into an immobilize. So you can't move, but you can just smack him in the face. And then the werewolf leap is another great example where previously they'd come out of stealth and like leap attack on you, and you get dazed and you'd walk around confused, and now they just does a quick knockback.
No dobrze, rozumiemy. Dalej.
This next change here is small, but I think it's a blaster's delight, which is all the monsters that had really long death animations all die instantly. You don't have to wait for the loot to hit the ground. It's very satisfying. You know, the big ass like spider hosts that crawl towards you, when you kill them, they pop instantly, and all the spiders go and hit the walls, and it feels great. The zombies feel really good too. It like they pop instantly when you kill them, and it's a very satisfying experience. So this should speed up combat quite a bit, and it just feels really good.
No właśnie, co z Nightmare Dungeon?
The next thing here is their socketable inventory tab, another tab for you to put socketables like gems and other socketables. And then there's also an additional stash tab that we're going to add. The next thing, if we could roll the clip, we took out just about all the all would go up, and then like click on the plunger and don't get hit by the spikes. That's all been replaced entirely with just monster packs of varying sizes, and it's just way more seamless. In this case, we only rolled some normal monsters, but sometimes it's a couple of elite packs. You never really know what you're going to get. It's like an Easter or a Kinder egg, I should say. And it just helps the dungeon flow substantially, like to just sort of blast through those things. And then a handful of dungeons have had their procedural logic updated, just so there's more variation in the layouts. So when you play it, it's just going to roll out differently. This is really just iterating on our dungeon set to make them feel much more sort of flow-inducing, not slowing you down. And then the next one here is minor, but it actually feels pretty good, and it has a big impact on the game. When you get those Paragon and level up notifications, we're actually going to tell you how many. So sometimes you'll realize, oh my god, I have like 15 skill points I can spend. And it actually tells you the number. It's a nice quality of life change. So I think that's everything.
Awesome.
I tyle?
Thank you, Colin, for running through quickly. I appreciate the efficiency of going through all the quality of life changes. Now I know Jeevan has been very quiet over here. He's only chimed in a little bit. And we do want to talk about a new thing that is coming to Vessel of Hatred specifically, and for Vessel of Hatred players. So, Jeevan, will you talk us through it a little bit?
Yeah, so it's my privilege to kind of talk about a feature that the whole team's been working very hard on that we haven't really mentioned much. And you know, we looked at the expansion. We had all these cool things, you know, Torment, new class skills, Spiritborn, but we thought there was a hole, and we wanted to particularly give build crafters a new way to play for Vessel of Hatred. This is for folks who, like me, whose dream cooking show has nothing to do with British baking, but instead would be called Colin's Kitchen. Twitch chat, if you would binge Colin's Kitchen, let us know. Yeah, let's. And I think some of you already kind of have an idea. So yeah, let's get into. As some of you already know, we're going to be talking about rune words. Yeah. So let's start with a little background.
Rune words.
So rune words were in Diablo 2.
Co tu się stało?
They were a very powerful way of augmenting gear with sockable content. And there's a lot of good sort of nostalgic feelings. They were popular. They were remembered fondly. You can look on the right. That's one of the most iconic examples.
Ale dojechali
teraz. The name is Enigma, and you would make it with runes. Ja, if Burr, and it would
powiedzą, no były runy.
Really cool skills that would come out of it when you
Dobra,
put it all
kupujemy.
together.
Jeśli runy będą dobrze działać, to kupujemy dodatek, Piotr.
And for Diablo 4, we wanted to retain the soul of what Diablo 2 runewords did, which is combining socketable components and creating more powerful items.
I patrz, to tylko w dodatku
But we
dodadzą.
also wanted to do something that felt appropriately fresh and new. And we wanted to lean into what's unique about the modern game to make the Diablo 4 version of runewords and make it stand on its own and really feel like the right version to be given to players.
Yeah, and what was so awesome about Diablo 2 runewords, right, was you got this set of runes that made a god item, right, and it broke the rules, like being able to teleport on other classes. Like, what the hell, Barbarian is teleporting across the screen? We really wanted to embrace that in a way that extended builds and didn't necessarily enforce you must play with this item, and we're really excited to share what that's sort of manifested, right?
No, dawaj.
Yeah, and you all have a lot of builds that you started with from the base game, and we want to add on to those.
Patrz, są runy.
So, what are rune words? They're a way for you to make your own spells. So there are two types of runes. There's runes of ritual, and they specify actions from the player that they have to trigger.
Aha, czyli tutaj
So you
jak
can
było
see
na
the example
początku, w
here of the
sensie...
Yule rune, which is a legendary quality rune of ritual. You have to cast a skill which has a cooldown. So, Frost Nova or something like that. Then you have runes of invocation. And these grant powerful effects as a result of satisfying those runes of ritual. So the example here, the Gar rune, gives you 2.5% critical strike chance for 5 seconds. And you can stack up to 10 times, up to 25%. And you can mix and match these. There'll be a lot of different runes of ritual and runes of invocation, and you can put them together as you see fit. So when you combine a rune of ritual and a rune of invocation, you pair them together, you put them in an item with 2 sockets, boom, you form a rune word. And as you can tell, there's going to be rarity. We're going to have
Dokładnie,
magic,
Master,
rare, and
wycięli to, żeby dać w
legendary,
dodatku,
and
bo
the
to
higher
było
rarity
quarterly
runes will have more
updates, nie?
potent conditions or effects. So one of the important elements of this is called offering, which is the rune resource system. So your runes of ritual will generate offering.
No nie ma opcji, no
and they're meant
nie
to
będziesz
feed
korzystał z
into their
run,
linked
trzeba ten
runes of
dodatek.
invocation so that they can consume that offering. And the
Bieda
sort of more
wersje,
demanding rituals that we would ask of you as a player gain you more offering. At the same time, the more powerful invocations that you would try to get require more offering. And so there's sort of like shared economy there. So if you can look at these runes on the right, you get 50 offering for casting a skill with a cooldown. And this rune only requires 25 offering for it to trigger. That's where overflow comes in. Overflow is when an invocation receives an offering in excess of what's needed to trigger it. But put more simply, we want you to have a mix and match system, but we want the pieces to be not super hard. They can't fit together easily when they have some rough edges. So many invocations can get different bonus effects when overflowed. Some of them might get increased radius to the effect. Some of them might get increased duration. But it'll always be proportional to the overflow amount. So as an example here, the Gar rune only requires 25.
Ale to Piotrek, zobacz, jest gain multiple stacks, czyli te 2,5%.
So every time you cast
jak zrobisz ten overflow, to chyba będziesz miał więcej, nie?
Of 2.5% critical strike chance,
czyli masz 5%.
crit strike. And so that's kind of how you get to play with this system, and you get to optimize it in different ways.
Jak się ekwipuje, to się w bronię wsadza?
It creates a lot of flexibility, right? Even like if you do a really demanding ritual trigger, for example.
Widzisz, dlatego w hełmie dali 2 sokety, żeby runy można było wsadzać.
Rune of invocation, it's almost a way to start scaling that rune of invocation in a completely different way beyond just triggering.
Widzisz, wezmą te runy,
Exactly.
dwie będzie można wsadzić, czyli na hełmie, klacie i spodniach. I broni.
Small ones, big ones, and also the same for the rituals, and you get to kind of decide which ones you think fit your build or are cool, and we do our best to make sure that you
Nie no,
can
powiedzieli, że jakiś tam more potent, no nie wiem, no ale pewnie staty zmieniano standardowo.
So a few rules. Runes can be socketed into items with 2 sockets. We've added another item to get 2
dwa
sockets
runewordy
for
tylko może
Vessel
być
of Hatred,
wyekwipowane.
so you'll have your helm, your two-hander, your gloves.
Ale tradeować
Sorry,
można
your helm,
runy, no?
two-hander, pants, and chest. They can only be paired with a rune of the opposite type, so you have to pair a rune of ritual with a rune of invocation.
Siema, Ragdan, siema.
2 rune words equipped. You can't
tak,
equip the
Kuba.
same rune twice, and they're available for users who own Vessel of Hatred. They stack in your inventory in the new socketable inventory tab, which will also have your gems. And runes are
Trzeba
tradable
kupić
between
dodatek, no nie
other
ma już opcji,
players
nie
who
ma
own
wyjścia.
Vessel of Hatred. And they unlock with a quest in the campaign, both runes dropping from as loot, but also rune crafting, which we'll get into later. And they drop at a higher rate in the Undercity, which is a specific place you can farm them.
No ciekawe, jak te runy się
So
tam-
now let's get into some clips here. We get to actually see it in action.
No,
So this is a
lepsze,
barbarian.
Poka.
And the rune of ritual they have is travel 5 meters. Very simple. And they're going to join that to the earthquake, which is a legendary aspect that you've already seen before, which requires 100 offering.
No.
So you see, we'll put them together in this item. And then all they have to do is just run around. Boom, earthquake,
It's gonna
dropping.
be insane
Aha,
with the
że
Paragon
biega i
legendary
earthquake
glyph we just
używa.
talked about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The earthquake train is leaving the station.
Jeszcze tam był aspekt, że Earthquake Does Devil z
What I love
tego
about this is
robi.
it doesn't just count your normal walking, right? If you're leaping, if you're charging, that's
To
all
fajnie,
counting
to sobie
towards,
do
like,
tego, do
distance
Nekrusa
that
jako
you're
bota to
moving,
będzie
right?
fajnie działać, jak są runy,
yeah.
które
And
odpalają
you
się po
can see it
przebiegnięciu
here in
jakiegoś
like the
tego.
whirlwind, for instance. Like it's obviously spawning earthquakes. So.
No
Is that
runy
a
OP, no.
Druid Petrify Ultimate? This must be the wrong clip. All right, sorry guys. We're doing it live. Let's just move on to the next one. Okay, so we have a Necromancer here with the Rune of Ritual, cast a non-channeled core skill, getting 25 each. And then this is a classic from D2, gain +3 to all skills. So you'll get to see this Necro's got 5 skill ranks for Reap and Sever. And they're going to go out and cast this core skill.
Casual, socketable Harlequin crest, pretty good.
So a little pew pew, just doing your basic core skill usage, filling up the offering needed.
Yeah, I really like the little tracking buff that fills up as you're getting it. So you don't need to really micromanage this. You can just at a glance see that, hey, I just filled it up, and now I get +3 ranks of Sever.
Yep. So now you're a +3. There you go.
Aha, czyli jak
What was that?
So yeah, this
czegoś
Necro's
używasz,
just
to
cooking, and,
główna runa ma ileś offeringu
oh, what?
i ona
Is
ładuje
this
tą
another
drugą.
broken clip? Did they just cast teleport? What? Okay, I think you guys
Teleporting
you had enough of me.
Necros. What are you cooking over there, Jeevan?
Yeah, I'll stop making jokes mostly.
Aha.
Yeah,
Teleport.
so what we really wanted
Jah.
to lean into with D2 Rune Words,
Jah
among other
bear.
things, was the ability to cast other classes' skills and use their power and harness it into your build. So with Rune Words, you're going to get to do that. Each class is going to share 2 skills and 1 legendary aspect, like the Earthquake one that you saw. And some of them are even going to get to cast improved versions. So for instance, instead of the standard Decrepify from the Necromancer, you get to cast Horrid Decrepify, which is the upgraded version.
No tak, tego
And
na
that's kind of, we
PTR
did that for a lot of reasons. We wanted to make some of them feel a little better and a little more powerful. And a lot of it is about balance. But one important thing that I always want to highlight here is that you always cast the best version of the skill if you have upgrades as the sort of homeowner of the class,
Znaczy,
right?
trochę
So what
taka
that
bieda
means is, let's
wersja
say you're a
jest, ale
Spiritborn and you equip the Cry Rune, which is the Vortex spell.
to jest
If you
jednak
have
kolejny
points
system,
into the
który tam można
upgrade,
sobie użyć, więc na
then
plus.
you'll cast the upgraded Vortex when the rune goes off. So I don't think there'll be any class envy. Like everyone will get the best version of their own skills, and then they'll get to use other classes' skills. And we're really excited to see how people can construct new builds and new archetypes and what they can do with using the power of the classes.
And that says enhanced war cry, so that means Necros can become berserk, right?
That indeed does mean that, and that enhanced war cry is a winner. I gotta say that one's real strong. We've already seen people
Ciekawe, że skille
just
z innych
chopping up
klas
the
będą
pit with
dostępne
that one.
dla
Yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to what kind of interesting new combinations and builds you can come up with by dipping into other class skills in unique ways. It really just like multiplies the possibilities of what you can do with any given class.
Yeah, exactly. And not only do we want you to augment your builds with other classes' skills, but runes will scale with gear. So when you get more interesting runes of rituals, you'll find ways to optimize them as well and get more output. So we really feel like people will have a lot of theory crafting that they can build off of the rune word system, and I'm very excited to see how you break the game. By the way, that's what she's doing on PTR for me. Just break the game. See every build you can find that totally destroys everything. So now we have the crafting element. So using 3 of the same rune, you can use them to roll a new rune. You go to the jeweler, or it might not be the jeweler, but we'll see. And you will combine 3 of the same exact rune, and you'll get a new rune out that is guaranteed to be different than the rune you put in. And there's a chance to up-roll it to the next highest rarity. So if you put 3 magic runes in, there's a chance that it'll be a rare rune. Same with rare. There's a chance that it'll be a legendary rune. And then on top of that, we'll have the ability to craft mythic uniques. So you can use runes. Each mythic unique can be crafted with a specific set of runes. You'll need a legendary, rare, and magic runes of a certain quantity, and 1 resplendent spark. And this is in addition to the existing mythic unique crafting.
I znowu sobie kup dodatek, to będziesz miał unikaty za darmo, nie?
I was going to say, this really harkens back to sort of crafting that was so core in D2. With the runes of being able to match 3 and get the next upgrade, but in a way that's a little bit more flexible and gives you more progression out of it. And this is all tradable, right? So that match 3, those crafting mythic uniques, what do you think that's going to do with trading?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to really build a sort of player community around how to acquire the runes you need, whether it's because you want to combine, you have 2 and you want to find that 3rd one to combine for a new one, or you're hunting for a specific mythic unique. I think
Ale teraz gadają o tradzie, nie? Są świadomi, że to spowoduje, że na tradzie będziesz runami. Ale co z tym tradem zrobią?
I really like how the rune crafting system makes it so you're kind of always progressing, right? If you're getting rune drops, then you're getting materials that can use to progress towards higher rarity runes and potentially towards these mythic unique items. Unlike some of the other loot drops, if you don't find a good piece of gear, it just ends up being salvage. Here with runes, you're kind of constantly getting some of that progression, even if it's not always the perfect rune right now.
Yeah, I think that's something that when we did talk to a lot of sort of D2 diehards when we built rune words, and one of the things that most of them tended to mention consistently was like every rune drop is progress, right? You're always moving up that ladder. And so we wanted to make sure that even if you didn't get the exact
spoko, no bo te dziury na gemy.
Well, I know
zawsze sadzały się takie samo, czerwone w klatę.
We've talked about a lot of stuff today. We had progression, itemization, we talked about quality of life, we talked about class changes, and of course the newest thing, which is Rune Wars, Vessel of Hatred. But the one thing we did want to quickly talk about was PTR. PTR is coming up. And we want to give a little bit, or at least some specifics on what that PTR test is going to be, and also hear from the team on exactly like what they're looking for from you guys out there that are playing, like for feedback as you guys play through the systems. Everything that we've actually talked about today is going to be present in this PTR. So all the class balance changes, the progression changes, rune words will also be part of the PTR. So we actually do want players jumping in and checking it out. So let's jump right into some of the PTR items. So as everyone knows, PTR from even the last PTR that we had will carry over content from your main account. So if you've already done all your status will carry over onto your PTR account. We did do a character copy as well. It was a while back though. So you may find that it might be a little dated from like the character copy that you have on live, but that will exist for players to actually use. One thing I will note is that we are planning on having 2 different testing phases for PTR specifically. The first testing phase will actually begin next Wednesday and will run through Friday, about midday, where we're going to actually give players the opportunity of kind of just starting characters from fresh, because we really need people to try out the new progression systems that Colin and Aislinn were talking about specifically in the beginning of the stream.
Ciekawe, jakie
So,
zmiany wyjdą z tego.
Wednesday
z
through midday Friday, we really need players to jump in, check that out, give us feedback specifically regarding anything tied to the new progression systems. Around midday on Friday, though, we will be turning on the rest of the PTR, which will include things like rune words and all the other features that we were kind of talking about. All the other features will be part of it, but rune words and things like that will be turning in on Friday. One thing that we've heard from feedback from players specifically, especially as we have addressed this in the past, is that there is going to be a boost vendor available for this PTR. So in Wbijaj, players will be able to go and visit this specific vendor. This is the best video that I was talking about because this Fallen is dancing and it looks absolutely amazing. This vendor will be available and you'll be able to interact with it. And this vendor will actually then be able to provide you a ton of enhancements to your character, which we do have a list of here. So you will be able to boost your character up to level 50. Level 60, of course, which is the new level cap after Vessel of Hatred actually ships. We will end up clearing out your whole map, your waypoints, Fog of War. We will do your class mechanic stuff and have that already unlocked. All Torment tiers will be unlocked. Your potions will be upgraded completely. And then I know based off of feedback that we got from like the last PTR was, hey, it'd be great if we could generate like legendary items, if we can get all the unique items, all the runes, or well, that's new now, but all the runes and everything like that, including masterworking materials, that will actually be available in this vendor. So this is a way for players to be more efficient while testing and being able to give us more feedback, especially around endgame related items. So we really need players to jump in for PTR. One last caveat I do want to mention is Infernal Hordes will not be available in this specific PTR. We are still doing some work on that right now before we actually get it ready, but all the other features within the game will be available. Infernal Hordes, as I mentioned, it's a permanent feature, so it's coming back to the game no matter what. And then separately, I do want to remind everyone that PTR right now it is still just PC BattleNet only. This does give us the flexibility of being able to upload, change things on the fly, like things like turning rune words on Friday, for instance, gives us we have the flexibility of being able to do that on our own platform. So it's just easier for us to be able to have that additional work from our side to be able to make things like that happen when we can do testing specifically from that end. But Colin, Aislinn, I'd be really curious to hear like what you guys are looking for specifically in this PTR from feedback from players that they can focus in on and provide feedback on as they go into the test.
Yeah, so I think we really want to see people focusing on the new journey. So starting from level 1 and feeling out what difficulty tier is right for you. And if that feels like it's the difficulty tier that you would expect to be on based on how powerful you've managed to make your character and how many of the progression systems you've engaged with. Like if you engage with tempering and you go all out and you're like, I'm going to make my character a blaster, even though they're only level 30, like how far can you go with that? And are you going as far as you expected you would be able to go?
Yeah, those are great points. It really is about, are we hitting that expectation that we've sort of created, right? Which is, we really loved how the Mind Cage was functioning. We loved how tormented bosses felt in terms of having hard mode versions of things. Are these difficulty tiers sort of meeting those expectations of all the things that we have had in the previous game now mapped to a more streamlined system that should be much, much easier to navigate?
Awesome. And I know on the class side, like Charles, what are you kind of looking for? What's the team looking for on that front?
Yeah, I think we're really looking at the new skills and the new key passives for each class and how they're usable at all points in your character journey, right? They should feel good to press when you just first learn these new skills. But they should also feel really good when you're in the late game and you're trying to, make a build all around them, right? Around your your stone burst, like does it feel like that has enough support and that you can make a stone burst build or dance of knives and or all the other different skills, like do they fit in, what's their appropriate power level, and we really want to make sure that the new skills and the new key passives enable new ways of playing our classes and they feel satisfying to build that way.
Awesome. And Jeevan, I know you mentioned to everyone, break the game with rune words. So is there maybe any more extra items you're looking for in terms of feedback?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely mostly about that. I want to see what people come up with. I want to see, what you can cook in terms of builds. You can do something fun or cool or unexpected. And also, I'm highly interested in the sort of balanced feedback. I think we'll get it from all of you. But we've had a lot of people on the team work very hard on conceptualizing how to make sure this stuff is right on the edge of broken without actually being broken. And you'll get to prove me wrong if that isn't the case. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I know we do want to jump into a little bit of Q&A before we kind of wrap up. I know we've been here for a little while, so we'll try to grab some questions specifically from Twitch chat. I know probably the most popular question right now from the community is about Armory, and I do want to start off with that specifically. And I do also want to just confirm that we are working on an Armory. The team is cooking on it right now. We just don't have it ready immediately, but as soon as we have an update, we will be providing that to the community. There is work for an Armory happening. We're not purposely ignoring it, I promise you. And it is in the works specifically from that end. So I know we have questions from Twitch chat, so this is where I actually butcher everyone's name. So in standard fashion, I will continue to do that. It's just
Właśnie,
a little different
o sezonie
have
szóstym mechanice nic nie było,
screen
nie?
in front of me, which is actually really, really beneficial. But I guess we'll start off with a question regarding the different difficulty tiers. So this is from Double DHZ, which is, since we now have 8 difficulties, does this mean with power increase in later seasons, more difficulties will be added? Are we planning on adding 20 difficulties like in Diablo 3? What's the plans around that?
Yeah, we want to be really measured in terms of when we add difficulty tiers. I think it sets us up for adding them when we feel like it's an appropriate time. We don't want to get to a spot where we have 20 different difficulty tiers. We want to have just enough granularity to support the amount of power that we're adding. And what we don't want to do is sort of say, okay, we're going to add things like rune words or add things like seasonal powers and then nerf all of you by making the monsters 100% tankier to compensate for the power. We'd actually rather create a system that when you get that new power, we're going to add another band of difficulty to get even more efficiency out of that power. So that's been the sort of guiding light. We don't want to continue to sort of nerf players into a spot where they can sort of use all this new power to push. A great example of that is previously in seasons, we would actually increase monster health to compensate for some of the seasonal powers. Now, if you get seasonal powers, if you're blasting Penitent and leveling to 60 faster, good for you. That's something that we think is actually really important to the system.
Awesome. I know next question that we have, this is a question I've seen a decent amount. This is from Explosive Cat. Hopefully your cat is not exploding. What's the purpose of Nightmare Dungeons now that glyphs have moved out of?
Dobre pytanie.
Yeah, so Nightmare Dungeons are going to be where you receive your masterworking materials.
Masterworking materials.
Because Nightmare Dungeons are going to be following the difficulty tier system now, you're going to be able to go into higher torment tiers, or rather higher difficulty tier Nightmare Dungeons, and get more masterwork materials out of that. So just like all other kinds of content in the game now, being able to go into a higher difficulty of that activity is going to ultimately be better for you.
Yeah, the grind, sort of putting a grind currency actually fits much better in a Nightmare Dungeon compared to the Pit, because it means that every sort of elite you kill, every chest you open, or every corner you go into and you find an elite pack, those are going to be masterworking materials, as opposed to today where it's like, well, the instant I make a turn that is not in the direction of finishing this dungeon has been a waste of my time because I want that glyph. That completely changes when everything in the dungeon is dropping masterworking materials, and we think that feels so much better for that type of content. Conversely, with the pit, again, we're going to reward you for pushing difficulty, and we do want you to sort of get there quickly and get that reward and get out. So we think that'll feel a lot better.
Yeah, so just for people, because I think when they immediately heard like, well, now it's just moved to Nightmare Dungeons and it's just at the end, it's actually part of the whole Nightmare Dungeon. It's not just the end goal, getting to the end and getting
Trzeba będzie
masterworking
Nightmare Dungeon
materials there.
całe
Just
ten.
want to clarify for chat, because I know immediately
a
they're
good amount. There's a good amount at the end when you kill the boss, right? Of course, the boss has to have good shit, but like,
No właśnie,
what's
co z
really
hordami? No
gonna
mówią, że
feel
coś tam,
great is
coś
like
tam
when you
robią z
run
tymi
into a
hordami,
massive
nie?
elite pack, like you just randomly run into, we spawned maybe too many. Those are all going to represent, little loot bags of masterworking materials, which is going to be huge.
awesome. This question is from RXU105. Are runes reusable?
Yeah. So, by the way, I just want to say, chat, I've been reading Twitch chat, and what you've said has struck a chord. Anyway, yes, they will be reusable.
Can't take you anywhere.
You can unsocket runes and you can move them into different items. Yes, absolutely. I saw a few related questions to that. They don't get to exist in the same item as gems. You do have to pick between gems and runes on any individual item.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I know there was a question related to another. Well, at least I don't know, Charles. You want to answer this, or if you have additional details. There's a lot of questions related to one of the mythic uniques, and it's additive damage to demons and angels specifically. I don't know if you want to talk about
I will confirm that is the wording on the effect. Plus damage to angels and demons.
There you go, guys. We'll just leave it at that. And
no further comment.
I know, no further comment on that. Additional question that we have related to Paragon is, why cap the amount of boards instead of just capping maybe the amount of glyphs we can use? This is from Hotner.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something that I think we can take back and really think about. We had discussed, and we felt like the cleanest solution from just sort of the flow perspective was that we wanted to just make it really sort of compact and make those choices about which glyphs and which legendary nodes and eventually what rare and magic nodes matter to you. But that's really good feedback and something we can continue to monitor as we go into PTR and as people get their hands on it. Again, it's really about making those boards more punchy, and the connections between those boards is something that you navigate during your journey. But the sort of end point is about making those really chunky choices on what glyphs you want and what legendary nodes you want. And we think that ultimately, especially now that Paragon is realm-wide and all your alts, I think we touched on that earlier, all your alts get to benefit from this. It's really going to streamline that process of getting your points locked in quickly on those alt characters and get them into the end game really quickly. But that's a really good point of feedback.
A question from WTF, Akalaka. I don't know. See, this is bad. Yeah, you get the point. Well, everyone need to be in Wbijaj to change difficulty like it is currently.
Regularne streamki jeszcze nie.
That's a good question.
Ale się powoli do tego będę przymierzał.
You could imagine how obnoxious it would be to do the pit in Karagar and then have to go to Wbijaj to then unlock the new torment tier that you just got. So we actually added difficulty tier selectors in Karagar.
Ale jak się będziemy zbliżać do nowego roku, to już będzie dobrze, bo będę miał biuro, miejsce, gdzie będę miał studio, takie z prawdziwego zdarzenia, że będzie klimat, a nie jakaś tam chata z tyłu, bo tu jakieś kolorki, neony, wszystko będzie takie, wiesz.
Question from a few people. There's like Corinter, there's another question.
Wtedy zrobimy streamki już
takie are glyphs kind of shared between all characters in the realm, or do they have to be leveled up separately?
So those are still leveled up separately, but that's something like going forward, we definitely want to emphasis on like making alt more seamless to play into, and we definitely there's some underlying feedback there, which is, wouldn't it be great if the Paragon glyphs were account wide? And it's like, yeah, that's something we can take back to the team. And philosophically, we really want to start moving towards a direction where making alts is really easy to get into and feel powerful. So that's something we can definitely take note of.
And I'll also highlight that, right, because the Paragon points are shared account wide or realm wide, as it were. If you make a new character, you're going to get a ton of Paragon points right away, which increases your player power level, which maybe means you take on a higher pit tier, and then you get the catch-up mechanic on leveling up those glyphs. So it is a little bit easier for your alts to level up those glyphs as well, even if it's not 100% shared.
Yeah, that's very true. You can level them up really fast in the pit if you're pushing deep.
There is a question regarding Eternal Realm characters, like, what happens to them when 2.0 kind of launches? What's the, like, I'm assuming because they already have like 925 gear, if they're at max level, they'll be brought down to that new eye level that we had mentioned. Is there like any specific changes or anything, or is it kind of laid out exactly kind of how we presented?
Wydmuszki na ścianie, oczywiście, że tak. Że nie wydmuszki,
I can answer this.
Gąbki.
We are doing some adjustments for those Eternal players who really like to play the game on one character. We wanted to make sure that there was new loot to chase. We also just needed to make sure that with the new character level adjustments, we sort of had to adjust the eye power of items now that the fact that the max character level is 60. In addition to our goals of really sort of creating more grounded numbers, it does mean level 50 is getting an eye power adjustment, as well as the affixes are being adjusted. But we are going to max roll every single affix that we adjusted power-wise. So, for example, if you get a 5, we're going to take those items and adjust them. We aren't going to re-roll those affix bands. Like if you had perfect affixes, we're just going to essentially max roll all of them within that band. So there's no feels bad about, I had this perfect item and you ruined it by readjusting it. But the sort of main takeaway there is we wanted to make sure in patch 2.0 that there was new loot to chase. We wanted to make sure that the new uniques had a place to sing. And that's all sort of in service to that, for that type of Eternal player who really likes that sort of long form progression.
Awesome. Question from Ice Panther. Rune words, are they applicable to all items and weapons? Are they restricted to specific types of equipment? Additionally, can gems be inserted into equipment with runes?
Yeah, they can be inserted into all types of equipment, so they're not restricted from being in uniques as long as you have 2 sockets for that unique. And to restate the slots that are available with 2 sockets, on base game it's 3. It's chest, pants, and 2-hander. We're also adding a second socket to helm, so you'll have 4 slots. And you cannot mix runes with gems in any item, and you wouldn't want to. You'd basically be losing the benefit of them.
Awesome. I know we have some questions related to like some co-op bugs. I will say that I've gone on, like forums and Reddit and addressed them, that we are working on them. I can tell you the team is most definitely working on them right now. Excuse me as I cough. Still getting over my sickness. And then I know this is actually I'm going to ask this because it's a funny question. Are there runes for G and then Vun?
I mean, my narcissism certainly would have let me do that, but I think we can't do that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, I would have loved to. But I will say, there are, the runes have these sort of phrases that they unlock when you actually compose the spells. And we have some, I think, fun references and Easter eggs to, the great Diablo games of the past. And so hopefully that'll kind of make you smile when you see them.
Awesome. And then runes, are they stackable?
Awesome, to było najwięcej powiedziane.
Yeah, they are stackable, and we have added a new tab for them as well. We have a socketable tab. So all your runes and gems will go there. So
there we go.
It would be pretty good for your inventory.
Yeah, that would have been really messing with inventory if runes did not stack, and now that they have their own tab. Yeah, and now they have their own tab, which is really, really good. So Cool. I know we are very over on time. So I do want to make sure that we let everyone go here so that they can eat, because we've now gone well past lunch over here in California. Just a reminder for everyone that PTR is actually going to be starting next Wednesday. We will have patch notes and the blog up immediately after the stream, specifically here, so you guys can check it out. Check out the patch notes. It's 17,000 words, a lot of words, so I apologize. I will say that for other locales, it might be until like early next week before those patch notes will be available. It just takes a while for us to localize on some of those, and they kind of came in a little hot. So we do plan on actually having that available in all languages. Just for now, they will be English only and immediately up after this specific stream. Again, PTR starts next Wednesday. We'll have 2 different phases. Wednesday through Friday will be that first initial phase where we need players jumping in, checking out the progression changes and testing all that out. And then starting on Friday for the rest of the week specifically, we'll end up having the boost vendor available where players can actually jump in and test out everything that they need to regarding rune words and all other things that are tied to endgame. I do want to give a huge thanks to everyone on this panel here. Colin, Aislinn, Charles, Jeevan, thank you so much for going through a ton of information. I do want to also call out the rest of the Diablo team, because they have been doing a ton of work towards Vessel of Hatred, and of course, patch 2.0 and Season 6. One thing we will say is that you guys actually haven't heard about Season 6 yet. We still have information to tell you about Season 6. We'll be sharing that more here in the coming weeks as we head towards launch. So there is still a seasonal theme and mechanic with Season 6 that we'll be sharing here soon. So thank you guys, everyone, and thank you, Diablo community, for tuning in. Check out Diablo4.com immediately after the stream, and we'll see you guys in Sanctuary. Thanks again.
No, ciekawe.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, we're ending with this. Best. I love it.
We can't forget the most important member of
I
the team.
tyle. Taki to był nasz Campfire, fantastyczny. Podsumowując i reasumując, największa zmiana jest chyba w dodatku, nie? Dodatek chyba najwięcej wprowadza. Właśnie z tymi runami. Bingo mamy... O, powiedzmy, że... 4 ustrzeliliśmy. Z tego wszystkiego. Nie ma sprawy. No szału nie ma, nie? Ale... Zajebiste zmiany osą. No nie ma sprawy, trzymaj się, masterek. Uleczyć run ma być? Uleczyć run ma być? Nie rozumiem, co to piszesz.
On this one? Pop the,
Co za random.
on this one? Alright. Oh.
No, także tego. Ile run ma być? A nie powiedzieli, ile run ma być. Także trochę chyba tego będzie, nie? Tak mi się wydaje. Jak to będzie zorganizowane. No dobra, trzeba sobie na spokojnie przeczytać teraz patch notesy. Zobaczyć, co tam z nich wyniknie. I tyle, nie? Zobaczymy, co z tego będzie. No dobra, to co? Ja się z wami żegnam. Fajnie, że wpadliście. Tutaj sobie odpalimy teraz kończenie streamka. I co? Widzimy się w Diablo. Dzięki, że byliście. Fajnie było z wami obejrzeć. Będziemy to powtarzać na pewno. Staram się to jakoś lepiej i fajniej zorganizować, nie? Cieszę się. Au, Bazylok. Do usłyszonka.